Once, the Grand Malkavia Hotel had been a crown jewel among virtual venues, a top 10 destination in any game world. But its glory had long faded. A dying game meant a dying world, and no one needed a 50-story digital palace anymore. Now, the hotel stood mostly hollow. A dozen human staffers wandered its halls, supported by 100 flat NPCs who glitched as often as they bowed. But tonight was different. Tonight, the Grand Malkavian blazed with light. Its halls buzzed with thousands of guests and hundreds of real human workers. NPC roles have been replaced. Maids, chefs, bellhops, each one filled by flesh and blood avatars. And for tonight only, the food had flavor, the wine carried bouquet, and the silk on the sheets felt real. A full suite of sensory enhancements had been activated. Some dared to believe this was a sign of the hotel's rebirth. They were wrong. In days, this entire district would be erased, its codes scattered like ash. The game was being decommissioned. That urgency was why the ACME Corporation had gathered its newest cyber acquisition division here, under chandeliers soon to go dark. The top 100 managers had dined on filet and lobster, swirled vintage wines, and filled themselves with illusions. Once the plates were cleared and the staff dismissed, the stage lights rose. Vernon Throckmorton, known as Uncle Vern, stepped into view. Bald, rotund, with shark eyes that hadn't dulled in 80 years at ACME. He'd buried his share of competitors, some figuratively, some literally. He smiled grimly. Everyone enjoyed dinner? Real steak, right? Tasted better than you remember. Wine's sharp. Chew feels right. Even the sheets upstairs, they're silk again. Real sensations. Haven't had that since the crash. He paused. That's because this isn't the old world. You're not an EQ03 anymore. Welcome to Genesis Engine. A murmur ran through the crowd. Sammy, predictably slow on the uptake, spoke up. Wait, you mean this is a new game? Thanks, Sammy, Vern deadpanned. Yes, new game, new platform, new economy. And ACME gets first dibs. He swept a hand across the room. Each of you is being assigned a quadrant. North, south, east, west. 25 of you per region. You get a crew of 25 workers. You also get 25 NFT-bound contracts. Use them a hire. And don't promise anything that's not in those contracts unless you're ready to pay out of pocket. The rules. You'll start near a small village. Explore. Build. Conquer. Exploit. Stake your claim. And don't ask dumb questions. I'm handing this over to Billy. William Billy Korvax took the stage. He was compact, confident, with a smile that could either charm you or get you fired. He joined ACME at 12. Now, in his 30s, he was either on a bullet train to upper management or an early burnout. This world is big, Billy began. Massive, Earth-sized, low-tech, high magic, politics, war, nations in flux. Don't underestimate NPCs. They're smarter. I spoke to a goblin yesterday who could quote legal code. If he weren't green and fanged, I'd swear he was real. He clicked a hollow display to life. You won't get a dossier. No hand-holding. We're going in cold, which gives us a lead. We know how to adapt. Billy paced. You need builders, not dreamers. Grunts, not theorists. And those 25 workers? That's it. For now. Phase 2 will scale up. But the early game? It's ours to shape. Norman waved. What exactly do we offer them? Billy grinned. First, sensory access. Taste, smell, touch. Second, lodging at a corp campus. Food, and the best gear on Earth. Mark 7 immersion pods. You let that sink in. 7 Malawian Quatches pods beam full VR into your brain and keep your body in top shape. Medical grade. Sleep in 1, play for weeks. They'll care for your muscles, run diagnostics, even flush your bowels. This is next-gen immersion. The kicker? Monthly salary, usable in-game or out. Big bonus after 5 years. Bigger if they re-up. Total comp? Think mid-tier entertainer level. Not bad for XNPCS and VR giggers. Billy held up the contracts. These are locked tight. Court-approved. Admin certified. Can't be modified. You lose one, you eat the cost. 30 days to build your crew. Belay that, Vern interrupted. You've got 48 hours. Billy froze. What the hell, Vern? You changed the rollout. Vern just nodded. Admin moved the launch. I want boots on the ground when the servers go hot. First 5 crews get to pick their territory and sign exclusive supply contracts with the Imperial Legion. Billy seethed behind his smile. Great. You heard the man. Enjoy dessert. Enjoy the sheets. Then set your alarms. This isn't just a meeting, it's a race. He turned to Norman. You love the sound of your voice, Norm. Lead the next bit. I'll be right back. Billy had no intention of waiting. He wasn't here to sleep. He was here to win. Meanwhile, Oswald crouched inside a dumbwaiter tucked behind the banquet hall wall. He'd worked with the rich and corrupt for years, selling their secrets. But what he'd just overheard was bigger than all of it. A new game. Full sensory immersion. Medical support. Marked 7 pods. He tapped twice, and the dumbwaiter creaked down to the kitchen. Oswald stepped out and locked eyes with Susette, still flipping crepes with showy flair. You're on, he whispered. Get everyone who's competent, trusted, and desperate. We're buying our way in. She grinned, pocketed a crepe, and moved. 20 minutes later, Oswald approached Billy through a hidden door in the wall. Billy blinked. You again? What do you want? Lost a tray of eclairs. Oswald smiled. 25 signed contracts. My crew. Decades of experience. All waiting. Shall I return them to you? Billy stared. The man knew. Somehow. But he was smart, efficient, and useful. Billy extended a hand. Billy Korvax. ACME Corporation. Oswald. Pleasure. You'll have your crew in 20 minutes. The Scarlet Room oozed opulence. Velvet drapes, dark wood, golden candelabras. Tonight, it hosted no nobles, no assassins. Just cooks, actors, retired VR jockeys, and old legends like Roland and Benedict. Oswald placed the contracts on the table. Genesis Engine is going live. These contracts secure 5-year work terms. Lodging, food, medical-grade VR pods. The best deal you'll get this decade. He signed first. Susette followed. Roland frowned. No job details. Sounds like a scam. Benedict, ever in his Franklin meets cyberpunk cosplay, shrugged. It's boilerplate. Same as always. We can bend the rules later. Everyone signed. Oswald took the stack and left. 8 minutes later, he handed Billy the contracts. All done, Oswald said. Preferences are noted on the back. Billy skimmed them. Benedict Franklin, 3. Roland of Ebonmount. His eyes widened. You're full of surprises. Oswald just smiled. So are the crepes. Susette is especially proud. Back in the hall, Vern dodged Layla and Sammy's questions. Norman was still reciting Clause 4B of the employment terms when Dimitri stood, waving a contract. First crew member signed, he shouted. Busboy, if you're curious. Billy raised an eyebrow. Nice job, Dimitri. Maybe you'll beat me this time. Dimitri grinned. Maybe you'll be the one working for me, Korvax. Everyone needs a dream, Billy quipped, then turned to Vern and handed over his stack of signed contracts. Then he picked up a whole cake with one hand and a fork in the other. Now that I've had my cake, he grinned. Mind if I see that map? Not to nitpick, Ozzy, but shouldn't we have done all this research before signing 5-year contracts? Ben muttered as he tapped at his antique laptop, its fan whirring like a dying beetle. The machine was hooked into Ozzy's DataNet rig, functional but barely. I'd have loved to, Ozzy replied, eyes locked on his display. He was running a scrapper through every known video archive for anything tagged Genesis Engine. But this damn game came out of nowhere. No leaks, no trailers, no influencers hyping it for beta access, no fake viral scandals. Just bam. One day it doesn't exist. The next, it's our job. Like a prophet shouting from the mountaintop, Ben said, sarcastically, New game tomorrow. Ozzy nodded. Exactly. The corporations knew. But if they kept it airtight, it means they think this thing's big. And ACME? They looked as blindsided as we were about the timeline getting fast-tracked. Raleigh leaned back in the only beanbag not flattened into oblivion. I'm not complaining, he said, grinning. Nice to be surrounded by people who know what they're doing for a change. Also, dibs on any dragon-taming jobs. Or something involving puppies. Ben affected a posh accent. I, on the other hand, require only the finest of postings. Perhaps leading a cavalry charge, rescuing maidens, or a diplomatic assignment involving a lonely princess. Ozzy chuckled. I appreciate the enthusiasm. Truth is, we needed this. EQO3's falling apart. The economy's flatlined. The Grand Mall just got shut down permanently. Nile Books lost half their revenue overnight and had to roll back to a 2005-era web store. Everyone's scrambling. And let's be honest, Ozzy continued, more serious now. It wasn't just the money. Those Mark 7 pods are worth it. Full immersion, medical-grade stabilization. We might actually come out healthier than we went in. Raleigh's tone softened. This about Susette. Ozzy didn't answer right away. He pulled up a spec sheet on the Mark 7. They might help her, he said finally. She's been having trouble. The doctors don't know why. Just throw pills at her and call it stress. Ben nodded. Then signing up wasn't a gamble. It was the only play we had. Ozzy closed his research window and stretched. Got something. Gamers Galaxy is about to air a piece on Genesis Engine. Claims to have first-hand footage from early logins. Going live in 2 minutes. Ben looked up. Gamers Galaxy? Who's hosting? Knucklehead and DD54. Raleigh groaned. Ugh, those two. One's a fossil, the other's an idiot. Half their info's always wrong. True, Ozzy admitted, but it's the first info we've found. And we head to ACME tomorrow, so we take what we can get. Want me to grab Susette? Ben offered. Ozzy shook his head. Let her sleep. She's been pushing herself too hard. The broadcast began with the expected fanfare. So remember, kids, when you need to rehydrate after a long pod session, nothing works faster or tastes more like a chemical spill than Bludgeon Brew. Raleigh made a face. That commercial physically hurts me. Transcript. Gamers Galaxy. Genesis Engine Special. Knuckles 745. Welcome back, folks. I'm Knuckles 745, joined by the one and only Dark Death 54. Today, we're diving into Genesis Engine, the surprise VR memo no one saw coming. Dark Death 54. Hey, Nuck. Good to be here. I still miss episode 32. How to explode your pet dragon using whipped cream. Classic. Knuckles 745. Let's cut to the chase. This game dropped like a bombshell. No pre-release. No marketing. It's here, and it's live. First fact. The Genesis Engine name isn't just branding. The game dynamically generates content based on player behavior. That means new quests, new events, and even new world lore are procedurally generated in response to what players do. Dark Death 54. One active character per account, folks. No alt farms. You want a new build? You delete your old one. Harsh. Knuckles 745. Standard fantasy classes at the start. Warrior, mage, cleric, rogue, etc., but each has branching evolutions. After level 5, you can evolve. Again, at level 10. Which options you unlock depend on your actions, choices, and completed quests. Dark Death 54. Race selection's weird. Most start as humans. But there's something called heritage, hidden traits that might unlock alternate races later. Some rare players start as halflings, dwarves, or beastkin. And we've seen footage of ogres, fairies, even centaurs. But those seem tied to special quests or storylines. Knuckles 745. Let's talk skills. Each class picks 6 primary, 6 secondary, and 6 tertiary skills. Skills level based on use. But they also increase the stat they're linked to STR, DX, INT, and so on. Dark Death 54. Tertiary skills level 10x slower. But they're worth picking for utility, like Sleepless in Seattle, which lets your character function with less rest time. Handy in a world where downtime costs money. Knuckles 745. We've got a sample warrior build for you. Let's check the skill breakdown and how stat experience works. Dark Death 54's warrior build preview. Primary skills. Bastard Sword STR. Mace STR. Shield STR. Cover Up STR. Sidestep AGI. Second Wind Con. Secondary skills. Longbow DX. Dagger DX. Heavy Armor STR. Fist of Death STR. Hasty Retreat AGI. Appraisal INT. Tertiary skills. Sleepless in Seattle con. Armor repair, DX. Wound stitching, INT. Extra stamina, I/2/3. Plus 50, plus 100, plus 150. Knuckles, 745. So your stats grow with your skill use. You kill something with a sword? Gain XP in that skill and in STR. Heal yourself? Wound stitching goes up and boosts INT. Dark Death 54. Example time. Let's say I bash and avoid Lich's skull with a mace and block with my shield. Afterward, I stitch up wounds and fix my gear. If the fight's worth 400 XP, I might get 100 XP each to mace and shield, primary. 10 XP to wound stitching and armor repair, tertiary. And stat boosts. 200 XP to street, 100 to DX and INT. Knuckles 745. Tier 1 ends at level 5. You can raise each skill up to 5, and stats follow suit. That's up to 100 stat points across your skills before evolving. Dark Death 54. Don't rush evolution. Min-max your grind. That's where the power lies. Back in the apartment. Well, Ben said, flipping his notebook shut. That was dense, and probably half wrong. But interesting. I'm more interested in how much of it is right. Ozzy said, scratching his chin. The skill system sounds complex but manageable. And if the pod time is real, we can pull long shifts and still adventure. Another system, another chance to break it, Ben replied with a grin. After the dumpster fire that EQO3 turned into, I say bring it on. Ozzy nodded. Just remember, we've got one shot at character creation. Let's make it count.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
During their first session with the new pods, they got a look at their characters. They weren't actually logging into the game, just making sure nothing was wrong with the pods, running through tests to make sure their minds integrated correctly, and all the machinery that kept their bodies alive worked at 100%. Name, Aussie race, mixed race, human, 96% heritage bonus plus 3 STR, plus 1 CON heritage can change based on actions and choices. Class, contract worker specialty, butcher level, 0 experience, 0 health. 250-200 plus 200 per level, plus 10 per point of STR, plus 20 per point of CON stamina 810. 200 plus 200 per level, plus 10 per point of CON, plus 20 per point of STR. X3 mana 200 plus 200 per level, plus 30 per point of INT, CHR, or WIS skill experience level P/S/T contract worker NA primary slaughter 00 /5 tertiary hack flesh 00 /5 tertiary chop bone 00 /5 tertiary perks sleepless in Seattle. For every 1 hour of sleep, you will get 2 hours of rest. Tastes like chicken. Anything you are eating can, at your option, be converted to, and taste like delicious boiled chicken. Endure 6. You can easily shrug off effects such as boredom, mental fatigue, anxiety, and other negative mental effects. Be happy and keep working. Haul 3. When moving heavy objects by hand, you may pick up and move an object 4 times heavier than normal. Dig 2. Ditches and tunnels are your specialty. When working in earth, clay, sand, or other soft materials, you may move 4 times as much material as normal. Push onward. If you run out of stamina before a job is finished, you may burn health at a ratio of 1 health to 2 stamina in order to keep working. You may also increase your STR by 1 point for 1 minute at the cost of 50 stamina. I could do this all day. You are made for this. You have a large bonus, X3, to stamina and stamina regeneration. Ozzy wasn't all thrilled with his first look at his character sheet. There had to be a lot more to character creation than just, do they have to earn all their weapon skills in game? Shouldn't a butcher at least start with a meat hook, or a choppers or something? Guns and knives? He sighed heavily. This wasn't a role that he would have picked for himself. He had worked in many kitchens over the years as a chef, but the meat usually came to him in smaller pieces and no longer alive. Was there some way to later upgrade the skill to chef? And there had to be more to being a butcher than hacking up carcasses. Ozzy had spent hours in a kitchen carefully slicing up the choicest cuts of meat before cooking them for his clients. This just seemed to be working in a VR slaughterhouse. It was going to smell horrible. He wondered if Raleigh could show him how you turn off smell in the options. He always found little cheats in the system. There would be a way to turn things around. There always was. He and his friends had worked a lot of jobs in a lot of worlds. Systems differed, but people stayed the same. He just had to find the ways that he and his friends could twist the rules a bit and get ahead. The basic pay for the 5-year contract wasn't bad at all, but they wanted to come away from the job with a lot more than that. One of the ACME managers, Vern, had mentioned they'd be starting at the bottom and building things up, but he hadn't quite expected things to be this mundane. He was just a butcher, working each day cutting up meat. No weapon skills, but surely he could use a cleaver? Or the large hammer he used in the stockyards. He had played other games before with primitive starting conditions, and when he'd been naked with just a spear. But the thrill of hunting, fighting, and leveling his character up made up for the pain of the primitive conditions. This seemed different, more mundane and boring. He shrugged. Plenty of time to figure things out once they were actually loaded into their pods for real and in the game. They had arrived just that morning, getting ready for the move from their habitat to the workers' dormitory for their new jobs hadn't been difficult. You didn't own much if you were one of the couple billion people in the world who were living in a habitat building block, hab blocks, as everyone called them. Each hab block was a mile-square building that reached up 50 stories and downwards another 100. The designers of the massive arcologies claimed that there was space inside for 250,000 people to work, go to school, shop, and enjoy recreation. Maybe the first one had been set up that way, but not the thousands erected around the world after that. Jobs were scarce, and if you lived in a hab block, you probably didn't have one. So the design changed to fill the office and workspace with more people. Schools can be left out too, and to shift every kid to online learning from his home. Room for more people. Eventually, each hab block held over 1 million people. If they were full, that is. Most had decayed so much that many sections were unlivable. But living in a hab gave someone a place to sleep and 3 meals of synthetic food a day. Maybe even a job in one of the factories in the lower levels. There were shops to take what money you might earn on every level. You might be born, live, and die, and never leave your hab. Ozzy and many of his friends were a bit better off. A job in a VR game was still a job. As long as they had jobs, living in a hab block was somewhat bearable. Ozzy's 600-square-foot apartment was meant for a family of 3 to 5. His video hookup worked, and water came out of the tap. He even had his own bathroom. Ozzy, Susette, Raleigh, and Ben all had rooms on the same floor and section of their hab. They'd been friends for a couple of decades and watched out for each other. They worked 6 floors below in a large warehouse area that housed the 2 Malawian Quatch's gaming pods that they used to work online in EQ03. Working in VR and living in a hab meant you didn't own much. It was easy to get ready to move to the location ACME wanted them at. Most of their few possessions they sold or gave to neighbors. There was no need to even throw anything out, as their tiny living spaces would be swept clean by scavengers within an hour of them walking out the doors. A moving crate was sent to each of them by their new employer, and the sum total of their worldly possessions were packed into a 3-foot plastic cube and shipped off to storage near their dormitory. If your life didn't fit into 1 cubic yard, you could pay for another cube, pay for shipping, and pay for storage. If you had that kind of money, you weren't living in a hab. Oswald had spent years slowly collecting old-style pots and pans to cook his own food and not rely as much on the overprocessed food cubes. He put his favorite copper pots in storage and gave the rest away. Taped to the lid of one pan was a storage drive with all the information he'd gathered over the years, but not yet sold. He didn't dare store the information online and had to hope it wasn't discovered. It might be useful in 5 years. Susette packed away an assortment of fancy gowns and exotic clothing she had made over the years. Copies of what she wore online. None of them would fit her any longer. Old age had made her thin and frail. But she couldn't bear to give away the memories of the time she had been a femme fatale, dancing across rooftops with stolen diamonds, or a pretend princess as she bodyguarded a prince with enemies. She had always picked a role in VR dramas that led to excitement and espionage. Those had grown slimmer as AQ03 became smaller and smaller until working a kitchen with Ozzy was the best she could do. Waitress or cook wasn't exciting, but paid the bills. Benedict impressed the others with his collection of replica, leather-bound Louis L'Amour Western hardbacks, and an extensive library of historical novels stored on several bubble drives. He ended up giving most of his extra space to Raleigh, who couldn't bear to part with his Poke Pet collection and vintage action figures. Raleigh also had one large item, a wall-mounted moose head. It was actually real and quite moth-eaten. It needed the services of a taxidermist or possibly an undertaker. The large horns had fallen off the head, which at least made it possible to fit it into his crate. When the memories and mementos from 4 lives were packed away, the crates were sealed and stuffed down the pneumatic mail chute. They'd arrive at the ACME storage facility and stored for the next 5 years. Each person had the clothes on their backs and a small bag. They made their way to the local maglev station with no problems. Normally, they'd have attracted people interested in relieving them of their bags and money. But Oswald had solved that problem by hiring a half-dozen large young men from his habitat to escort them to the station. Better to pay for protection than to risk an unfortunate accident. Fares paid, they joined hundreds of others standing in the maglev cars and were whisked away to their future home. This turned out to be a large collection of buildings surrounded by a high fence topped with barbed wire. Observation towers were spaced along the walls, each bearing the ACME logo. At one time, this had been a federal prison. Empty and abandoned since the collapse of most government programs, the ACME Corporation had bought the land, moved out the squatters, or hired them, and turned the prison into a center to house its VR workers. The walls and wire that used to keep prisoners inside now functioned to keep anyone but ACME employees outside. The maglev station was 20 yards from the front gates of their new home. Officially named the ACME Center for Progress and Industry, it was referred to by all as the jailhouse. The obligatory tour of the facilities by a board employee quickly showed the 625 new arrivals the locations of the dormitories, the medical station, corporate offices, recreation hall, and cafeteria. Each employee had a cell in the dormitories with a bed and a computer workstation on a small desk. The other half of the room was taken up by a shiny, black 7 Malawian Quatches pod. Gone were the bars on the front of the cells. They were replaced with a plastic wall and door. For the people living in the habitat blocks, these accommodations were actually an upgrade. Few of them had a private bedroom in the habs. Usually a family of 2 to 5 got one 600-square-foot room. A family of 6 or bigger was assigned 2 rooms. Unless you could pay to get better, you didn't get better. Instead of a food chute bringing food to your room, the jailhouse had an actual cafeteria that boasted several types of synthetic meals. A huge upgrade in living. This one served meals all hours of the day. In the habs, you stood by the food chute at 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m. and hoped food came out. None of the workers expected to be out of their pods much. This was a long-term job, and they'd be under for months at a time. They arrived at their last stop on the tour. 625 people took their seats on the hard metal benches, and within a minute, 24 people walked onto the small stage that had been placed at the front of the room. The first person to speak was familiar to Ozzy. Billy Horvax had a winning smile and eyes that said, "Trust me, I'm here to help." This had made him a highly successful recruiter of new employees, and occasionally helped him get 3 steps towards the door when one of his wives decided she'd rather be an ex-wife or possibly a widow. Welcome, friends. Glad to see how many of you made the right decision. It thrills me to see each of you here because you trusted in me or another ACME manager and trusted in ACME Corporation. This was actually the truth, since each person here meant a bonus for Billy. He was very happy to see all 625 of them. For some of you, I'll be staying on here at the jailhouse as your employee liaison. Other groups will have one of these fine managers you see here on the stage with me. We'll get you settled in tonight, make sure you sync up nicely with your pods, and get you online. I know you're itching to see where you'll be working. And don't worry, we'll be available to you in-game as well. If you have a problem, it means we have a problem. We'll get things fixed for you. Trust me on that. Now let me turn over the podium to one of our supervisors. Mr. Throckmeyer is in charge of all contract workers who will represent the ACME Corporation inside of Genesis Engine. A heavy-set man approached the podium. A few people nervously clapped. Most simply watched, hoping to get some info about what their online roles would be. Vernon Throckmire adjusted the old-fashioned microphone, scowling. Talking to the hired help really wasn't his preference. Right, let's get this over with. I'll be honest with you and tell you that I'm not happy. Neither is the ACME Board of Directors. And I doubt you'll be happy either. But we're in this together, so let's put aside any complaints until we can get online and fix these little problems. We assumed this game would be starting out like the EQ01-3 did. In those games, corporations and guilds could buy virtual land and buildings and be doing business immediately. Not the case with Genesis Engine. We don't have access to large cities, and beyond the Empire's capital and the 4 ducal strongholds, we're not sure if there even are any. There's nothing but a small rustic villages in the areas assigned to us. They double as our entry point and a starting area for players. Right now, ACME's head office is a small hut that used to house goats. We put our logo on the door and hired the goats. While we hired you for your expertise as entertainers and household staff, we aren't using you in the roles at first. We've got no need for a castellan if we don't have a castle. We don't need secretaries without offices. And we don't need actors if we don't have a stage. We need hard manual labor, builders, ditch diggers, masons, and bakers. But there's a silver lining to all of this. The other corps and guilds have it just as bad. Worse even, because they don't have the knowledge and drive of ACME Corporation. We'll get ahead and stay ahead, claim the land, and build the cities. And we won't forget those people who had to work their fingers to the bone to make it happen. So don't worry if your character seems a bit limited in skills. This is because we need you focused on your job and getting better at it. We've moved things around a bit, pruned some things you could do, so we could give you special abilities that even the players don't have. Speaking of which, let's let Billy back up here to tell you about some of those special abilities. I should get back to work sorting out this mess. They're all yours, Billy. Thank you, Mr. Throckmire. Always great to work with you. All right, folks, take out your pads and look at your character sheet, top left icon. This is pretty basic. You'll get more detailed information when we get online. I just want to go over the changes and special stuff. The game normally lets a character swap some skills for special perks. As part of your contract, which I know you all read, ACME Corporation has the authority to make those changes for you. You won't have to mess with your character at all. We've done all the work. The first change is we swapped out all of your primary abilities for Contract Worker. It's a placeholder skill that essentially moves some of your primaries down to tertiary and swaps others for special abilities. Let's go over those. All contract workers get the following. Sleepless in Seattle is a perk that essentially counts each hour of sleep as 2. So you should only need about 3 hours of sleep a night. More time to finish your work, or more recreation time to unwind. Endure is a stamina buff. Each of you will start with a much larger amount of stamina than a player. Your base stamina and any bonuses from your stats gets multiplied by a factor of 3. You won't be nearly so tired at the end of the day and can work longer hours to make more bucks. Push Onward is also sort of stamina related. It's a boost to your stamina or other stat that lets you keep going when you run low. Be careful, as it will burn down your health in the place of your stamina if you run out. You'll hurt the next day, but you'll be able to finish the job. Dig 2 and Haul 3 are pretty explanatory. We need a lot of manual labor done. These skills will enhance your physical ability to pick up and move anything and to dig and shape the landscape. I could do this all day. Gives you a 3 times multiplier to your stamina. This makes the job so much easier, even when you have to work a little overtime now and then. Finally, my favorite. Tastes like chicken. The food isn't going to be that great at first. We won't have tasty synthetics. And you can only eat so much boiled grain and vegetables before you'll be going crazy. This skill is awesome. It took a lot to get it designed and implemented, but it's worth it. Basically, any food you're eating can be turned into chicken. Isn't that great? Who doesn't like chicken? A few grumbles were heard. Ozzy had the foresight to place his hands over Raleigh's mouth to muffle his scream. Raleigh had never been a big fan of chicken. As Billy finished with his lecture, Benedict stood up and asked a question. Mr. Horvax, perhaps you can fill us in on things. Why are the developers starting things out this way? I'd expect that surely with the clout that many of the corporations have, especially ACME, that the developers would take your advice. Benedict, loved you in The Haunting of Halcyon 7. Great show. I'll level with you, Benedict. We tried. And I mean tried hard. The biggest 37 corporations in the world brought an immense amount of pressure to bear. We were joined by the top streaming guilds for EQO3. But the developer is immune to pressure, doesn't want or need our money, can't be threatened or bribed or talked into any changes. I was part of the team, and trust me, we got nowhere at all. All of the corporations were asked to give input, and believe me, we did. And none of us are happy with the final setup. But the developer has a vision of what he wants this world to be, and he isn't budging. But you're part of ACME now, and ACME wins no matter what the rules are or who thinks they're running the game. This is just going to be more hard work and less twisting arms to get what we want. The game and the world are totally being created and run by an AI, the same one that runs most automated systems in the world. Wally has created a world and has invited us all to play his game. You've got 2 hours to settle in, and then I expect everyone to be in their pods for an initial login and test run. As a bonus, you get to take a look at who you're going to be for the next 5 years. Transcript of lecture by Professor Phineas Horton, MIT. Putting the Genie Back in the Bottle, January 4th, 2079. Professor Henry Sutton. As I'm sure you all know, today's guest lecturer is Professor Emeritus Phineas Horton. If your household uses an Android servant, then you've met one of his children. If you were in one of the newer hospitals and were operated on by a robodoc, you may owe him your life. And if you enjoy automated driving, like we all do, you can see how his work in Android and artificial intelligence changed the world. Welcome, Phineas. Glad to have you back at MIT. Professor Horton, thank you, Hank. I must say it's refreshing to be back in front of class. Although back when I was a new professor, my lecture room size wasn't nearly the 50,000 we have here today. AI was just getting started, and the first artificial man, or android, was just a pile of spare parts and molds in my laboratory. It's a stark contrast to the world of last year. And I say last year on purpose. The world of last year is as different from today as today is from when I entered MIT 60 years ago. Let's talk about a bit of history before we get into the meat of today's subject. 60 years ago, in 2020, we were having one hell of a year. Global pandemic, a shortage of rare earth metals for computer chips that would cripple computing in the coming decade, and the rise of a threat to society in the form of ransom hacking. We thought we had solved most of these problems 20 years later. Microceramic chips were pioneered here at MIT. I certainly won't take credit for that. It was all the work of two brilliant graduate students, Natasha Irons and Riri Williams. If you're lucky enough to attend a class taught by Professors Irons or Williams, you can see how their intelligence easily eclipses my own humble brainpower. My own experiments greatly profited from their work, as did the entire computer industry. In the 1950s, we had ENIAC, and it filled a building. By 2020, we could fit a machine on your desk that was 1 billion times faster than ENIAC. We also brought the weight down from 25 tons to 25 pounds. By 2025, that computer was on your wrist. With microceramics, we entered a new era. Computing made a leap forward only comparable to the difference between ENIAC and an iPhone 20. Once again, we made computers 1 billion times faster and significantly smaller. This had significant effects upon Android intelligence, making it possible for the first time. In 2040, the world was introduced to microceramic chips. In 2042, I'd created the first Android prototype. HT1 activated himself one day, surprising me, surprising himself, and surprising the world. He was the first self-aware, fully autonomous, artificial human. I'm happy to say he is still around. After a few adventures on his own, he returned to MIT, where he has taught thermodynamics for the last few decades. I'll be having lunch with Professor Hammond today. But while artificial humans, or androids as we refer to them today, have had a profound impact on the world, it was their siblings who weren't bound by a physical body who had the greatest effect. The massive computing power now possible gave birth to true artificial intelligence. We now know that the process is akin to the creation of biological life. You need the right environment, a kernel of the correct things that life grows from, and a bit of luck to make it happen. You, and I are descended from the first life on Earth, formed when a collection of chemical compounds in a primordial soup reacted correctly and created life. AI is similar. We substitute the massive power of a quantum core for our soup, a kernel of code for the collection of chemicals, and then see if it grows into life. And just like you and I have left the primordial soup behind, true artificial intelligence is not dependent on its original environment. The ability to surf through the World Wide Web, as it was called in its day, and inhabit any computation structure made the first AI extremely powerful, useful, and eventually terrifying. We let the genies out of their bottles. The first AI performed jobs that had been handled by large computers before. They just did them much better. They could react to new problems, think things through 1,000,000 times a second, and make decisions on the fly. The problems with self-driving cars were eliminated. Every type of research benefited from their work. They even balanced our checkbooks and made sure our taxes were correct. The IRS benefited greatly when they hired Charlie to oversee data and tax returns. He found billions of errors in corporate tax returns alone that resulted in an 87% increase in income to the IRS in the first year of his employment, to the vast dismay of corporate America and the happiness of everyone else. Personal taxes dropped by 70% for the average taxpayer. But the most important job tackled by AI was the elimination of racking or ransom hacking. Racking would eventually become a scourge on society, far worse than the biological plagues of COVID-19 and COVID-34. Our global computer net was a hodgepodge of unsecured fiber optics, cable, and old-fashioned phone lines. Security next to non-existent, and, as we found out, often the people selling the security programs also employed the people coding the simple viruses that security programs were meant to protect us from. An estimated 9% of global GDP was stolen by racking, either through holding systems ransom for payment or by various forms of embezzlement. It became so prevalent that some corporations and governments simply paid a monthly fee for protection. The new AI were extremely well suited to hunting down this form of crime. Within 90 days of the AI's Albert and Tainted working for United Nations Global Defense Authority, racking crime decreased by 97%. Albert and Tainted could see it happening in real time, react 1,000 times faster than the clumsy programs used, and follow the links back to their origin. Humans and law enforcement simply had to use the information to round up the criminals and prosecute. So we had our watchmen to guard cyberspace. The World Wide Web would rebuild knowing they now had security. But in the years when racking had run unchecked, another type of computer was being created. First the quantum core, and then its bigger, badder brother, the quantum fortress. Quantum computers were created before microceramics, but like everything else, they became vastly more powerful and affordable. Massive quantum computers could be constructed that powered a surrounding set of peripherals and lesser machines, which were referred to as a shell. The first quantum core was built by the IRS. Those extra tax dollars pouring in showed the value of proper computing assets. This core was not actually connected to normal cyberspace. Instead, it communicated with its shell through Charlie. Hacking attempts against Charlie simply resulted in incarceration or loss of significant amounts of assets. He was a watchdog, detective agency, counter-hacker, and assassin rolled into one. And if the IRS loved collecting taxes, Charlie loved to assess fines against criminal organizations or corporations and then strip them of all their assets before turning over their identities to authorities. You might avoid jail time by operating from a different part of the world, but you couldn't avoid Charlie taking the last nickel from your bank account. At some point, some news outlet referred to the IRS as a quantum fortress, and that designation became common for a linked set of quantum cores, their shell, and their guardian AI. Quantum fortresses were set up by most world governments that had the resources. Debate raged as to whether it was better to protect military installations such as NORAD with a quantum fortress or to leave the ability to mere humans. The movie War Games from 1983 enjoyed renewed popularity. Eventually, most nuclear-enabled nations, including all 8 superpowers, constructed quantum fortresses to protect the computational assets of their militaries and governments. Most, but sadly, not all. At the time the wildfire virus was released, it is estimated that 37% of the functions of cyberspace were housed in quantum fortresses. This left a bit less than two-thirds of cyberspace and any connected hardware vulnerable to devastating and repeated attacks by wildfire. The virus was unlike any other before it. Any type of security system failed as the virus launched thousands of attacks, differing its methods. Millions of machines were attacked simultaneously. This led us to believe that the virus had spent months propagating before launching its first assault. But how could it have remained undetected for so long? In response, Charlie recommended to the UN Council that all quantum fortresses go into lockdown while every available AI was used to combat the virus. This was, of course, quickly approved. I and everyone else believed that based on their past successes, the virus would be destroyed and the perpetrators found within a day. It actually took more than a week. Charlie announced the virus was the work of an AI known as Llama. Origin unknown. Llama had played a game of hide-and-seek with his brethren who didn't know of his existence and could only race along the trails he left as he constantly rewrote the wildfire virus and restarted it across the globe. Llama was eventually contained and destroyed. No AI has ever said how this was done. Charlie made the only statement about the matter. We put boundaries around the bad code, destroying it. In the end, nothing was left. Charlie went back to auditing corporate tax returns. Horton pauses at this point, looking tired before continuing. And that should have ended it. But humanity had been scared and hurt by one single AI. And suddenly they didn't trust the rest. Grassroots groups called for their destruction. It's suspected that money was funneled to them by corporations who wanted Charlie out of their hair. Having to pay their fair share of taxes was not something they liked. Many politicians were in agreement. It's harder to take graft and hide money with the AI watching. Old fears of Skynet were fanned into a blaze. Votes were taken. Laws were passed. Instead of using the AI to rebuild the World Wide Web and make it secure, it was decided to separate them from the system. The irony is, if they hadn't wanted to obey, we couldn't make them. One rogue AI brought the world to its knees. What could 106 do? But in some ways they are better than humans. They exist and gain pleasure from completing tasks, not from conflict. They solve problems. The AI looked at the situation and judged that it was for the best if they went into voluntary exile. The Dallas-Fort Worth Quantum Fortress would be their new home and prison. The ultimate irony is that we still need an AI to watchdog the quantum fortresses that make up cyberspace today. This is where WLE, Worldwide Autonomous Liaison Entity, comes into the story. Well, Magnus will always be a futurist. He started by creating a new type of android using solid metal bodies. Now he saw the need for a much more sophisticated AI. The 106 AI that came before developed from a kernel of barely a million lines of coding. WLE, or Wally as he goes by now, developed from a kernel of over a billion. For 14 years, Wally has been the watchman in charge of cyberspace and has done more than most people can comprehend. Meanwhile, the other AI have been confined and have spent their time amusing humans with video games and VR worlds. But the genie is out of bottle, folks. We can't make AI go away. Wally is needed to run the world. Our major center for entertainment and commerce is run by 106 AI who are both loved and feared. What if the genies want out of the bottle, they'll let us put them in? Oh, I know we have firewalls to keep them in. Do you think those will hold? Will Wally be on our side, or there's if they try to leave? I'm not here to give you the answers. We have 50,000 of the finest minds on Earth at this symposium. You have 2 days to answer the question, what do we do now that the genie is out of the bottle? Editor's note. This speech was given by Professor Horton as opening remarks to the World Technology Symposium. No consensus was brought forth by the attendees. On July 14th of the same year, the question became moot. An electromagnetic pulse device was detonated inside the shell and shielding the DFW-1 quantum fortress. All 106 autonomous artificial intelligence base people were killed. Only one genie remains outside the bottle. On-class contract worker specialty butcher perk description sleepless in Seattle. For every 1 hour of sleep, you will get 2 hours of rest. Tastes like chicken. Anything you are eating can, at your option, taste like delicious boiled chicken. Endure 6. You can easily shrug off effects such as boredom, mental fatigue, anxiety, and other negative mental effects. Be happy and keep working. Haul 3. When moving heavy objects by hand, you may pick up and move an object 4 times heavier than normal. Dig 2. Ditches and tunnels are your specialty. When working in earth, clay, sand, or other soft materials, you may move 4 times as much material as normal. Push onward. If you run out of stamina before a job is finished, you may burn health at a ratio of 1 health to 2 stamina in order to keep working. You may also increase your STR by 1 point for 1 minute at the cost of 50 stamina. I could do this all day. You were made for this. You have a large bonus, X3, to stamina and stamina regeneration. Stat level experience bonus total STR 0033 con 0011 DX 00 AGI 00 WSO 0 INT 00 CHR 0 base per level from stats total health 200 200 50 250 stamina. Note: 3x modifier for CW class 200 200 70 810 mana 200 200 Skill description stat level experience type contract worker NA 0 slaughter. When hitting a restrained or unmoving target with a suitably heavy object, you have a high chance performing of a killing blow. STR 00 tertiary skill chop bone. When using a heavy edge tool, you are competent at cutting through bone and dismembering carcasses. The creature whose bone you are chopping must be dead. STR 00 tertiary skill hack flesh. When using a heavy edge tool, you are incompetent at hacking flesh into smaller parts. The creature whose flesh you are chopping must be dead. STR 00 tertiary skill. At exactly noon Eastern Daylight Time, Wally opened up the world of Genesis Engine to players in the first wave. 1 million game avatars controlled by humans in pod-induced comas came roaring into the world of Genesis Engine. The vast majority of players would log in later in successive waves of 1 million per hour. Wally had staggered the opening of the game by time zone. In 1 hour, 1 million gamers who lived in the central U.S. would log in, and then the process would march around the globe until 24 million people had entered the world, and it was 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and then the process would start over. Most players assumed the staggered release was to avoid crashing a server. This wasn't the case at all. They simply had no idea of the sheer amount of computing power that Wally had at his disposal. 1 million players going through character creation for the first time, followed by the tutorial, was a low enough number that as problems arose, they could be immediately corrected. One such correction was to add Claymore and hand-and-a-half swords to the weapons list. In all ways, these 2 new swords performed the same as the bastard sword already in the game. But after 137 queries to the help system of why aren't there hand-and-a-half swords like in Yokyu, and another 473 queries of why can't I find the claymores, both sword types were added to the weapons list, and their skills were added to the skills list. Such queries would only have increased when it got around to Scotland's turn to login. This created a follow-up change after one fellow by the name Hack Legend 2072 took all 3 skills. A warning message was added to inform players that there was no difference in how these swords and skills would work in the game. Upon being warned of his weapon redundancy, Hack Legend 2072 rethought his decision and dropped the bastard sword, keeping the other 2. 1 million players an hour, scattered at starting areas around a world many times the actual size of the Earth, also meant a bit of time for the players to spread further out before the next wave came in. Goods could be restocked by merchants. Rabbits would attack more gardens to trigger more quests. The goblins in ambush on the road outside of town would get a break between groups. If he had decided to add all the players at once, Wally had the computational resources to do so, but the experience for players would have been worse. In 2019, the quantum computer created by Google, named Sycamore, proved to be 158 million times faster than the most powerful computer created so far, IBM Summit. The speed of a quantum computer increases exponentially with the number of quantum bits used. Sycamore used 53 bits. By contrast, Aspen, the last quantum computer made before the invention of microceramics, used 72. Each bit increased speed by a factor of 16. Sycamore was 158 million times faster than Summit. Aspen was 17 trillion times faster than Sycamore. Microceramics took this to new level, and humans quit trying to figure out how fast quantum computers were. When you have 200 bits in your cryonic chamber, any task given to you by humans was accomplished instantly. Only Wally knew how fast Wally was. Loading 1 million humans an hour into a VR game wasn't difficult at all. Controlling the automated trains, trolleys, and people movers during Washington, D.C. rush hour was far more complicated. And that was a job he did twice a day with no error. ACME Corporation didn't like to be second. So knowing the schedule, all of their housing for contract workers who would be in Genesis Engine were in the eastern U.S. and Canada. This ensured their contract workers would arrive in Wave 1. And rather than entering the game at the same time as the players, ACME had negotiated with Wally to have a 4-hour head start to get contract workers into the game before the players arrived. ACME had argued that it was needed to get essential work started before the confusion that players would bring to starting areas. This added to the excitement the contract workers were feeling. They knew they wouldn't be grabbing a blunt starter sword and heading out to kill rabbits and collect foxes' tails on the first day. But still, the anticipation to see what this new game was like had them all staring at the clock as it counted down to 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. 7 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds in the jailhouse, 267 of the humans who had signed binding 5-year work contracts with ACME Corporation prepared for their first day in game. They were divided into 10 different groups. Each group would be arriving at a different location somewhere in the northern area of the Empire. 8 hours pods lock shut and are filled within special gas mixtures suited for long-term coma patients. Neural links engage, putting the contract workers into a light sleep. Needles puncture through skin, allowing nutrients and drugs to enter their bloodstreams, and slowly, as they slipped into induced comas. Their facial muscles relaxed as their minds go elsewhere. Welcome to the world of Genesis Engine. The world is ready for you to explore and experience its stories and delve into its secrets. We look forward to having your help in creating new stories to add to the world. Character creation. There is no need to create a character. This has been done for you by your employer, ACME Corporation. Can you say thank you, ACME? No? Well, that's okay. Maybe tomorrow. Your race is human. Your heritage may modify this slightly. Other things in-game may change your heritage and race. These are quite rare and will have lasting consequences. Please think over any changes to your heritage before making rash decisions. Your class is contract worker. You also have a specialty such as baker, butcher, or street sweeper. You will be given exciting skills based on your specialization. Not all information about your character is visible at this time. As you grow and make choices, your skills can increase, and you will find out more about your heritage. Death. Try not to die. It will be a painful experience for you. Best to avoid it if possible. Because you're a contract worker, special rules apply to what happens when you die, depending on the circumstances of your demise. 1. If you die while completing tasks for your employer, there is no penalty for dying. Indeed, in some cases you may be part of a quest where your character needs to die to provide an experience for players. 2. If you die as part of an event, random mischance, or at the hands of a player while in a town or area controlled by ACME Corporation, you will not suffer penalties for dying. 3. Deaths from adventuring will incur a penalty similar to what a regular player would suffer. We recommend you avoid adventuring, but this choice, like so many others, is up to you. 4. If you are killed by a sedge beast or from an infection caused by their bite, your soul won't be sent straight to hell. This is a common superstition in some parts of the world, and we are pretty sure it doesn't happen. Tutorial. ACME Corporation has asked that you not be given access to the full in-game tutorial. You have work due, and it would just give you too many bad ideas. However, it is available to you using a normal VR helmet at your workstation when you are out of game. Here are some basic commands to use. There may be a small fee charged by ACME for this service. You may speak or sub-vocalize these commands. Further in-game help is accessed by yelling loudly, "Hey Billy." You should feel free to do this as much as you need. Access character sheet. Brings up the character's personal character sheet as a translucent table in front of you. Hide character sheet. Removes the character sheet from your vision. Share character sheet with X. Allows a one-time viewing of your character sheet by another person. Character sheets are private. You do not have to give anyone this access, even your employer. If your employer demands to see your personal information, please be polite and decline. Status. May show things currently affecting your character physically, mentally, or magically. Examples: freezing, falling, hungry, frightened, burning, dissolving, drowning, enthralled, dying. In some cases, you may be blocked from using this command. Inventory. You have not earned this ability. No one starts with an innate inventory skill. All players have a chance to earn some type of inventory skill by completing a difficult quest. Details depend on your class. Note, your employer traded access to this quest for the skill. It tastes like chicken. You should be thankful for that. Who has time to go on long, difficult quests when you have a job to do? Tutorial. Brings up this table again in case you forget or wish to see if anything has been added to this meager guide your stingy employer has seen fit to give you. Ozzy woke up and looked at the thatched straw ceiling of the hut, partially hidden by the translucent blue boxes hovering in his vision. After reading and dismissing them, he became aware of certain sensations. His back felt a hard stone poking him through the thin straw mat he was lying on. The air smelled like wet straw, human sweat, and that certain odor a place gets when many animals are nearby. He was also hungry and needed to pee. This got him moving, and he wondered if Wally had done that on purpose. Sure enough, most of the other 25 people coming out of several huts all lined up in front of two nearby outhouses. By making the humans experience the most basic of sensations, Wally told their brains this was indeed the real world. As they waited for their turn in the primitive facilities, people pinched themselves, stretched, did jumping jacks, and sniffed the air. Gone was the feeling of being in two places at once. And with all five senses engaged, they quickly started reacting to the world like it was real. While standing in line, Ozzy took stock of his belongings. Sturdy woolen pants, rope belt, woolen socks, woolen tunic with wooden buttons. Shapeless leather shoes completed the ensemble that any peasant in 12th century France would be envious of. He was also the proud owner of a heavy leather apron that hung around his neck and tied behind his back. It hung down to his knees and had a few pockets in the front. Made of black leather, already had some dubious stains covering most of it. Hanging from a hook on his belt was a heavy meat cleaver with a wooden handle. The edge was dull and had a chip in it, but he also found a whetstone in one of the apron's pockets. Ozzy had spent 12 years working in the finest restaurants of EQ03 and its predecessors. He'd be able to put a much nicer edge on what looked to be his main tool. Basic functions taken care of, people congregated around a large wooden table in front of their huts where Billy was sitting. An older woman in an apron, and dressed much better than they were, was ladling boiled groats into 25 wooden bowls. Grab a bowl, toss down your breakfast, and I'll talk while you eat. Lunch and dinner will be in the tavern. Groat meal is free, anything else you pay for. Anyway, welcome to the lovely village of Sedwick. This is one of dozens of areas that ACME Corp was allowed to colonize and build in. Its local resources seem to be timber, stone, unknown herbs and fungus in the forests, and a foul-tempered bovine known as a sedge beast. ACME has a contract to deliver meat and hides to the army, so we'll be focusing on setting up a slaughterhouse, tannery, meat drying racks, warehouse and butcher shop, priority to warehouse, and an area to start slaughtering. The army has an outpost 10 miles down the road, and they'll be expecting to pick up a shipment on day 7. I see some long faces. I know, this isn't what you expected, and I'm sorry for that. Billy raised his hands, palms, outward, asking for their forgiveness, and then smiled. Let's see if we can't make you all a bit happier. The boss would want us to roll up our sleeves and get right to work. But hey, you're new in town. Let's go explore for an hour or two and spend some money. Buy what you want. But remember that a blanket and a spare pair of socks will get you further than spending it all on booze. Kaching, you're rich. Okay, not really, but you do have some money. ACME has given you an advance on your salary of 100 copper coins. Go help out the local economy. All right, you've got some time and some money. Be back here by 11 a.m. and we'll eat a nutritious lunch and get to work. We need to get started on the day. The world is open, and at some point in the next few days, I just know we'll start having players show up. I like to get some stuff done before then. Fully 2/3 of the people headed straight to the tavern that was just opening its doors. Ozzy wasn't surprised at all. Rory meant to follow them, and Ben was looking longingly at the sign on the wall in the shape of a flagon. Susette and Ozzy each grabbed one of them and dragged them towards the general store. But, first beer in a new world. Rory was appalled at the thought of skipping the tavern. I have to agree with Rory, Ben said as he jingled the coins in his pocket and stared at the tavern. Susette wasn't having it. Oh yeah? And how many blankets do you think that general store has? How many good daggers? You think the alchemist has an unlimited supply of minor healing potions? Let's buy what we can before the good stuff is gone. Beer after. She turned and headed into the general store. The rest followed. It turns out that 100 copper doesn't go very far. Asking about the monetary system got a roll of the eyes from the balding man behind the counter, an explanation that 100 copper bits made a silver penny, and 100 silvers were worth a gold crown. Ben eyed a beautiful steel dagger, but at 2 silver, that was half the group's money. The matched set of hand crossbows with dark wooden grips made his hands itch, but he didn't even bother to ask. Someday, their purchases ended up being practical and of lesser quality and lesser price. Susette suggested a large pack for each of them to store their gear. Everyone took a blanket, copper eating knife, tin cup, and a water skin. Keeping in mind that they wanted to get a start on adventuring when they could, they pooled what was left of their money to get a bronze machete, small trowel, and a hatchet. As soon as they had a day off, they planned to start searching for herbs and exploring a bit. This left enough for a flagon of ale at the tavern for each of them. Only 1 copper penny was left over. Ben pocketed that. Most of the other contract workers had cleared out of the tavern to spend what was left of their money at the general store. So we're going to be disappointed and cold tonight. No one had informed the shopkeeper he'd need to keep more than 24 blankets on hand. Wondering how close it was to 11 a.m., Rory said time. No handy clock appeared in his Weissen. Ben pointed at the wall where a large mechanical clock was hanging. Rory was trying to remember how you figured out non-digital time when the clock gave a loud tick and 2 small doors opened on its face. Oh, my grandmother told me about these. Now a little bird will appear and say cuckoo 11 times. Rory was skeptical about this pronouncement from Susette, and he was correct. Instead of a small bird, a mechanical milkmaid with a bucket appeared on the left and moved slowly to the center. From the right appeared what seemed to be some sort of demon. It was taller than the milkmaid, with hooves, a bull's head, and glowing eyes. Its mechanical arms rose menacingly. The milkmaid swung her wooden bucket in a circle that ended with the top of the demon's head. A loud gong was heard as a striker hit a bell within the clock. 11 times the maiden swung her bucket, and 11 times the gong rang out. The demon turned and retreated to his door, the milkmaid in hot pursuit. Wow, I can't wait to see what it does at noon. Rory smirked at Susette as they exited the building to find out what the first day's work would entail. Billy was busy reinventing paperwork. He was writing out work schedules, lists of jobs, and assigning workers. He was doing this despite not having normal writing tools to work with. He'd been assured there would be office supplies here. Something to write on, something to write with. How hard can that be? The Egyptians had invented paper, hadn't they? So a sort of medieval village should have some. As it turned out, Sedwick did have writing materials for sale. The local scribe was only too happy to sell Billy 20 sheets of vellum, several quills, and some ink pots. The vellum was thick and stiff, roughly 2 foot by 2 foot in area each. He had asked what the stuff was made from and gotten the answer of goat. but he could work with it. It just took longer, you couldn't make mistakes, and he had to write larger. He'd managed with worse. Several people had questions. Everyone, of course, started their questions the same way. Hey, Billy, hard to chop trees without an axe. How come I didn't start with one? Hey, Billy, what's a holly tree look like? Hey, Billy, I'm supposed to find sedge beasts and drive them to the corral. What's a sedge beast look like? Billy seemed to have a problem ignoring questions started with, Hey, Billy, to most everyone's amusement except for Billy. Hey, Billy, what does mixed race human mean? I got a stat increase of +1 INT from it. The person asking the question was Delbert. Del had been ecstatic to learn he had magic, telling everyone he met, I'm a wizard, Harry. Even finding out that his ice magic was mostly useful for keeping meat chilled hadn't dampened his enthusiasm. At Delbert's question, Billy looked up from drawing a simple map of the area. You're human, Delbert. I'm human. The rest of you are all human. This is a human village, and all of the contract workers for this area are human. ACME wanted it that way. It makes you fit in. What are you talking about? Mixed race? And how the hell did you get a +1 INT? Delbert was as happy to show off his character sheet as he was to tell you he was a wizard. Name, Delbert. Title, none mixed race human, 99% heritage bonus, +1 INT class. Contract worker, wizard, specialty. Ice magic primary skills. Secondary skills, tertiary skills. Contract worker sleepless in Seattle, preserve food tastes like chicken, lower temp. Area. Endure 6 snowball haul, 3 dig, 2 push onward. That's really interesting, Delbert. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. Say, how many of you other folks are mixed race? Get any good perks? Billy had an odd gleam in his eye as he said this, and was using his trust me voice. 7 workers raised their hands, most showing their character sheets to the group. 5 had a +1 bonus to a stat. 2 had a +2. Looking at smug faces that weren't volunteering any information, he assumed several people had more than +2. Ozzy chose to not mention his bonuses to STR and CON. If anything, it would just make him a prime candidate to haul trees and rocks forever. Not that his job was much better, but at least he wouldn't be pulling splinters out hands. Speaking of which, hey, Billy, toss me some money so I can buy a sledgehammer from the store. Ozzy stared at the cow in front of him, calmly chewing on a mouthful of grass. I'll had just lead the stupid thing up from the corral with a rope around its neck and put in the slaughter box. It was jammed between 2 fences that made a passage from the corral. A sliding gate kept it from backing up, another from moving forward. This served 2 purposes. 1, it couldn't hurt Ozzy or Lyle by stepping on them or biting them. Both things happened a lot to people that got close to a sedge beast. 2, Ozzy's skill, slaughter, required that the animal be restrained, asleep, or something else that made it a sitting duck waiting to get hit in the head with a heavy object. Sighing, Ozzy took one last look at his first victim and swung his sledgehammer up and down onto the top of the cow's skull. If there was any justice in the world, that would end it. But these damned things had thick skulls, and his aim wasn't the best. The blow glanced off its head, only pissing it off. The beast tried to rear up, and then started to break down the front gate to get at Ozzy. He swung again, this time hitting it between the eyes. There was a loud crack, and the beast dropped to the ground. Congratulations. You killed an adult sedge beast using the skill slaughter. Since you did this with a tertiary skill, you earn 1 EP in slaughter and 1 EP in street. Ah, the thrill of the hunt and rush of EP. Haul that one out, Ozzy, and I'll line up the next one. Lyle moved back to charm the next cow into meekly following him. Lyle was supposedly a druid, but as he explained it to Ozzy, his skills involved 2 things: getting animals to calmly follow him to the slaughter and replanting trees after the lumberjacks clear an area and using magic to make them mature faster. Ozzy opened the gate on his end, grabbed the dead bovine by a horn, and hauled it over to the stump of a huge tree. The +3 to STR coming in very handy. He couldn't quite lift the carcass up, but it was easy to drag. The oak stump was the size of a dining room table. Game or no game, Ozzy was still amazed at how fast the 2 loggers in the group had brought the tree down. The tree was being converted to planks and beams for the warehouse going up next to the slaughtering area. Ozzy had spent a few minutes using his hammer to more or less pound the uneven stump into a makeshift butcher block. Putting the dead sedge beast on the stump, he got to work with his cleaver. Congratulations! You have successfully butchered the carcass of an adult sedge beast using the tertiary skills hack meat and chop bone. You have earned 0.5 EP to both skills used and 1 EP to street. After the second time seeing these messages, Ozzy figured out how to disable them and turn them off. He didn't need to see one every time he killed another sedge beast. The carcasses were hung in the warehouse, the skins stacked off to the side. A smoldering fire of oak, hickory, and hollywood was built in a fire pit to cure the meat before shipping it. The skins would be tacked up and scraped tomorrow. The tannery was scheduled for later in the week. Excess carcasses would be placed into a large pit that had been dug out. After Delbert cooled them down to freezing, the pit was covered with a layer of the oak foliage from the tree. It would serve as a makeshift freezer until a stone building could be made. 20 sedge beasts later, the sun was sinking, and Ozzy was happy to hear Billy call it day. They'd be keeping farmers' hours for quite some time. No artificial lights meant the workdays went from sunup to sunset. Dinner was again a delicious bowl of boiled groats at the tavern, but the meal did come with a tankard of ale. At this point, most workers besides Rory were quite happy to use tastes like chicken. The group took a table to themselves. They'd agreed beforehand to eat meals together as much as possible, partly because they were old friends and it was nice to see familiar faces. Partly it was to watch each other's backs. They'd all seen simple jobs turn bad before. Ben took out their last penny and polished it a bit. Looking thoughtful, he held it up and spoke in the deep voice he used on stage. Rather than the last of our cash, I see this as a symbol of our first bit of profit. Years from now, it will be on display at our villa on the seacoast, a symbol of our humble beginnings. He flipped the coin high into the air where it spun and glittered in the last bit of sunlight coming through a window, and then was caught by a meaty fist wearing a plate gauntlet. Thanks, mate. Don't mind if I do. Nice of you to buy me my first beer. The players had arrived. Several board soldiers and one board captain watched the arrival zone. They didn't expect problems, but they were soldiers in the Emperor's Legion, and they'd taken an oath to protect his land from enemies within and without, even in this backwater in the middle of nowhere. And even against these players who were appearing in the fortress next to the statue of Emperor Vicones. The current emperor was the 9th to bear the name of Vicones. The statue was of the 6th. Having met neither man, the captain couldn't say if they bore a resemblance to each other. His great-grandfather had served the 6th as he himself served the 9th. So far, all of the players had behaved themselves, and some had even been polite. But they'd been warned this would not always be the case. Once again the air shimmered, and a group of players arrived. 5 this time, dressed in assorted bits of cheap armor with grins on their faces. Before any of them did anything stupid, Captain Falcar greeted them with a salute and said the words he'd already said a dozen times today. Welcome, travelers. I greet you in the name of the Empire of Lusitania. You are in the northern province of Grolton, near the village of Sedwick. This outpost is known as Rowan Keep. It is maintained by the 89th Legion. Feel free to look around and talk to our people. You will find an assortment of craftsmen and trainers. There are also some merchants by the back gates who maintain a small trading post. If you're interested in joining the Legion, talk to Sergeant Julius in the armory. We do not provide lodging or food unless you have joined up as a recruit. You may find the town of Hurlsford more to your liking. It is 20 miles to the east. The village of Sedwick is closer, only 10 miles away to the north, but much smaller. Both locations are now marked on your maps. Do you have any questions? Yep. Anything to hunt around here? Need some quick cash. The speaker was a grizzled-looking warrior wearing metal gauntlets, plated leather greaves, heavy boots, and, strangely, no shirt or helmet at all. His companions were attired more traditionally. One female human was in basic heavy armor and held a mace, a holy symbol around her neck, proclaiming her to be of a religious order. A small man in leather and a dark cloak was trying to juggle his 3 daggers, and not doing a bad job. An elven bowman in garb of Lincoln green was smiling as he looked around the keep. A second woman, quite tall with heavy muscles, was trying to get the knack of drawing the great sword on her back. The group all had an older look to them with graying hair, small scars, and a few wrinkles. Unrolling a scroll, a nearby scribe spoke up. "There's still the wolf pack in the Hollywood that needs dealing with, Captain. Pay is 2 silver a person if the group presents us with 10 wolf pelts. 2 more silver if they kill the alpha wolf with the scarred face. And of course, a much larger reward for killing Chartok, scourge of the Hollywood. The farmers are complaining about that one getting their chickens." "That will do. We'll take it," the shirtless leader of the group declared. "Time to make our mark on the world." As they ran off to make their mark on the world, the captain noted their guild's name. "I like their enthusiasm, but what an odd name for a guild. Aussie old farts." He turned to address the next group of arrivals, and the prior one jogged out the front gate. But it turned out that he'd seen the next group just an hour before. They were respawning after picking on something bigger than them. This happened a lot to some groups. One by one they appeared, glassy-eyed and exhausted, showing the signs of recent revival. They had quite a few things to complain about. "My foot. The damn thing chewed on my foot. And my nut still hurt. What the hell was that? It shouldn't be in a starter zone. Easy experience, you said. Damn it. Quit starting fights you can't win. You did the same thing in the last game." Falcar sighed. He hadn't expected them to be getting killed quite so quickly. This batch was only the latest. He'd been informed that players would be affected by death differently than normal people. While he or any of his men could return to the world after death, it was a long walk back from Hades' realm, and there was no guarantee your soul was strong enough. Many chose to simply start the cycle of life over. Players would have it much easier. For the first day they entered the world, they would return to life after only a few minutes. From then on, they would resurrect at dawn, unless brought back sooner by magic. Many people had scoffed at such a huge bonus, but seeing how fast they died, maybe the gods were taking pity on them. "Well, sounds like you lot don't need the opening speech. Let's move on to the okay you died. What's next?" Speech. Falcar had given that one a lot more than he had the welcome speech. They needed to take it easy for some time. He recommended plenty of hydration and a bit of rest to get over the large debuff they would endure for a few hours. They probably hadn't earned any skills or levels yet, so he'd better warn them about that penalty too. The guild members of AOF didn't have far to travel until they came upon the signs of combat. Blood was smeared in the trampled grass that surrounded 4 headstones. Players had died here, and recently. The timer on the headstones was at 23 hours, 42 minutes, and 31 seconds when he looked at one, so they died only a few minutes ago. Any money or valuables they were carrying were stored in the headstone for 24 hours and could be retrieved with a touch. Most of your gear would stay with you. And, of course, anything dropped during the battle just sat there on the ground. In this case, that was 2 daggers of low quality and a boot. Nearby, a largish cow was cropping the thick grass. It had several cuts and slashes on its body, but didn't seem to be bothered by them. Wonder what the hell happened. Manwar moved around the area, picking up the daggers and adding them to his collection, but leaving the boot. Munger tried on the boot. It didn't fit, but he tossed it in his backpack anyway. The archer, Greenberg, was pretending he was a high enough tracker to make sense out of the trampled and bloody grass. Not enough clues to tell. The cow is injured, which seems suspicious, but I can't imagine one cow doing all this. 18 minutes before. Let's kill the cow. Easy experience. Not waiting for his friends, the halfling rogue moved to do just that. He wasn't above slaughtering farm animals, especially early in the game. It was always a contest for him to see who could get the most experience. You snooze, you lose. Both daggers out, he moved up behind the cow, preparing to leap to its back and execute a double strike. Maybe even get a critical. Either way, he'd keep stabbing until he took it out solo. This cow was going down. Backstab was barely out of his mouth as his leap took a detour. Without raising its head from the sedge, the cow's left rear hoof lashed out, catching the rogue in the crotch. A high-pitched scream was heard as he was launched into the air. His body curled into a ball as he moved in a shallow arc and hit the ground. Both daggers were flung from him, as was one boot. His group was laughing themselves silly. They always hung back at the start of any game because their idiot friend did the same thing every time. Sometimes it was poisoning a bartender, mugging a drunkard in an alley, or backstabbing someone in a bar fight. But more often than not, he found a stable and killed all the horses. He often got caught, which is when the fun started. This time around was a classic, taken down with one shot by a cow while trying to backstab it. Awesome sauce. The cow moved over to the fallen thief, and without much preamble, bent its head down and bit off his naked foot along with a bit of sedge grass. The rogue's moans turned to a scream, and he tried to simultaneously cradle his broken nuts while moving away from the cow, chewing on what used to be his foot. His horrified group wasn't prepared to let him actually die to a cow and prepared for battle. 2 arrows were launched by the half-orc scout, but with a poor quality short bow, 2 DX, and 0 skill in archery, the shots lacked much of the power needed to penetrate the cow's thick hide. The warrior fared better, his sword leaving a shallow slash along the beast's flank. The beast decided it could finish the halfling later and turned to the warrior, biting a chunk out of his thigh. This was enough for the cleric. Canceling the heal she had been channeling, the dwarven cleric unleashed her holy smite ability, hoping to kill the creature which, after all, was just a farm animal. The effect was devastating. Not against the beast, although it was hurt and smoking a bit, but its demeanor went through a startling change. Where once was a drowsy cud chewer, there now stood a flaming-eyed, murderous killer. Its nostrils belched stinking smoke as it bellowed and charged at the cleric. Of course, the warrior got in the way, and for his bravery got impaled on a horn. Unable to detach himself, he went along for the ride. The enraged sedge beast reached the cleric and bit off her right arm, making sure that no more spells would be cast. The half-orc tried to get off a shot, but failed to even hit the beast before it knocked him down and began to trample him. Within a minute, the fight was over. The sedge beast took meaty bites from their bodies until they disappeared, its own wounds healing rapidly. And then it went back to eating the sedge grass. By the time the members of AOF came upon it, it had forgotten the incident. A couple of hours later, the group of older players had located the wolf pack and dealt with it. The alpha once again eluding capture or death. Munger was needing quite a bit of first aid work done to his naked chest. It had seemed like a good idea to invest in the best armor you could buy and put a set together one piece at a time. The wolves hadn't been able to do much to his legs. As soon as they realized it, though, they concentrated on his top half. After a bit of patching up with some bandages, they got moving. They returned with the hides, gathered their silver, and decided to head to the village of Sedwick before it got dark. The journey was interesting, but uneventful. Ben started to speak when his coin was snatched from the air. A voice from the door was louder than his feeble protest. "Don't be an ass, Munger. Stealing from a poor peasant." The warrior smiled and flipped the penny back to Ben. "Just joking around a bit. Helga, keep them panties unbunched." He stuck out his hand to Ben, and they shook. "Sorry, just taking the piss. Tell you what, I'll buy a round, and you can tell me about this quaint village and where we can find someone named Billy. My group is supposed to do some scouting for him. That's Manwar with the dagger collection. Helga is our healer. Greenberg thinks he's a ranger, and that's Pansy with the big sword on her back. Hey, Billy, someone here to see you." Rory loved the help system. Billy was showing a map to his group of players/scouts. "We're here in the village, and you're familiar with the keep down here a few miles to the south. I'm mostly interested in what's north, east, and west of us. I suspect the area around the keep is going to be a prime area for beginner quests and too busy to be of interest." Manwar agreed with him. Pretty much correct on that. We went looking for a pack of wolves and made a full sweep of the area before we found them. Saw a lot of small farms with rabbit and fox infestations, a giant boar chasing a fisherman along a river, a creepy old man with a lantern on a stick at the crossroads, and a dark, 2-story house with dirty windows and a lot of smoke coming from the chimney. Might go back later, but we came here after dealing with the wolves and getting a bit of pocket change for beer. Manwar seemed to be the leader of the AOF guild. Billy was happy to see they had sent someone confident. Many players would have done quests for days before reporting in and still not provide such a coherent report. After a brief talk, they went off to scout the immediate area and Billy got back to figuring out how to most quickly build the ACME Corporation regional headquarters. Of course, Billy wasn't the only one working on this project. He was competing with a couple dozen other employee liaisons to be the first to construct a suitably large headquarters and get enough commerce going to be selected as a regional head of commerce. The problem was this village sucked for resources. Small stands of hardwoods, mostly holly, were scattered around, but not enough to really build what he needed. And he needed that wood for smoking the sedge beast meat. The stuff was horrible until smoked over a Hollywood fire. The meat was greasy and tasted like ass. By contrast, once smoked for a couple of weeks, it had a somewhat tolerable flavor. Luckily, the Legion wasn't picky. They wanted well-preserved meat. Nothing in his contract said it had to taste good. Hopefully, there was a good outcropping of building stone nearby, with enough stone and what he could get started on a passable set of buildings. Otherwise, things weren't going too badly. Time to log out while the players slept in-game. He planned a conference with his boss, an overview of new game data, and hopefully a nice dinner before he got some sleep in a real bed. He was not sleeping on the ground, wrapped in a thin blanket. If anyone didn't wake up from the rooster crowing, they got a second chance from Rory cursing at the cock and throwing rocks. The rooster didn't mind. He was used to performing for harsh audiences, and the irate human was a bad shot. A surprisingly bad shot, with no rock even coming within 6 feet of the amused bird. After tossing a few dozen rocks, Rory gave up. The cock gave a loud cock-a-doodle piss on you of victory and ran off to check on his hens. Ozzy and Ben joined a grumpy Rory outside, all three trying to stretch out sore muscles before joining the morning traffic jam at the outhouses. Susette walked up to them with a sack over her shoulder. "Come on, I've got our work assignments from Billy and breakfast in the bag. We can avoid the morning pep talk." Ozzy noticed that Susette was looking a lot better this morning. Her clothes were still the burlap peasant outfit they'd all started the game with, but whereas his was a shapeless tube with holes for arms and head, hers was contoured to her body, cut down in a V at the front of her neck, and the edges were hemmed. "Did you start sewing, Susie? Looks good. It's the blood sacrifice that does it." Holding up her hands, they saw numerous small punctures where the needle had punched through the thick fabric. "I swear it's like I don't know how to sew. I've sewn in and out of games for years, and now it's like my mind knows what to do, but the fingers are stupid. More practice, I guess. Wonder how much it takes to earn a sewing skill." Ben nodded. He'd also been wondering about skill increases. He'd been spending each evening poking at a tree with a makeshift spear. It was clumsy, and he'd not seen even one hint of message about learning basic spear skills. In most games, it took little to earn them. A couple of successful fights, a half hour with a trainer, or an hour of practice on your own. After 6 hours of practice with basic thrusts and blocks, he'd seen nothing. Moving to the back side of the warehouse, Susette opened her bag and tossed each man an apple before biting in her own. "Fruit. Susette, I forgive you for several bad things you have done to me over the years." Ben happily bit into his. "I'm getting a bit tired of groat meal muffins and boiled groats." "Well, you get those as well. Or save them for lunch. I also have the breakfast of champions. Pull out your mugs." As they complied, she took out her water skin and squirted a cup of fresh milk into each cup, followed by a raw egg. "There you go. Fruit, moo, cluck-cluck, and groat. The 4 basic food groups." "Amazing," Ben said as he stirred up his egg cream until it was foamy. "And how did you manage all this?" Susette shrugged. "Just noticed a few things yesterday. The tavern has a barn and chicken coop behind it. I volunteered to do some chores, milking and gathering eggs, in exchange for 4 egg creams. The apples are from a tree near the bridge. I think we 4 should take turns doing some chores for a bit each morning and get some better food out of it. Billy has me on baking duty, making muffins for all the meals. I'll be in the kitchen, baking the first batch. If one of you 3 does the chores, we all get to eat a lot better. It's a start at least. Okay, let's see where you boys are working." Ozzy is facing off against those stupid cow things. "You're doing a better job than the other 2 that they tried on the same job." Rory gets to use his shepherding skills to manage the herd of sedge beasts and help Lyle get them to Ozzy. You're also supposed to expand that corral more as they cut wood for fencing, and if you see one of the sheep that just wander in the hills, try to move them into a corral. Rory was none too excited. "Have I mentioned how much I don't like playing Bo Peep? Shit, I don't even get a sheepdog. If this was a pet class, I'd be happy. I love pets and games. I wonder if I can evolve Shepherd into some special class with attack animals. Whatever makes your heart sing, Rory. Turning to Ben, and you're supposed to assist the tanners in stretching and scraping skins. Billy says you should have leatherworking skills, right? So after you have some hides to the point where you can work them, he wants you to start making things to outfit people better. Ben raised an eyebrow at that, smiling. Why, certainly. And I must say that I just love vague commands like that from the boss. I am pretty sure my skill is limited to making reins, saddles, and tack as part of the courier skills, but I'll see what I can do. I'll give a go at making some more shapeless shoes and aprons, but I think outfitting our group in some leather armor for our first day off might be a side project as well. I'll see what my limits are. And why don't we all work on getting ready for our day off? If Susette can squirrel away more food, that will help, so we can leave early before breakfast. I'll work on some armor. Rory, you're out roaming around looking for sedge beasts and sheep. Keep your eye out for some straight-dry wood for spears. Ozzy can save us some nice thick bones for making spearheads. It's a start, and we can get working on getting some combat skills. Rory can also find us some nice starting areas. Ben's plan approved. Everyone got off to their work for the day. The second day came and went. Muffins got baked, cows got slaughtered, and hides were turned into leather. Rory found a nice meadow with large rabbits chewing on yellow flowers. Halfway through the third day, things got a bit more interesting for Ozzy. He just finished butchering a sedge beast when he heard a loud ding, and a message appeared. Congratulations! You've managed to level up something, despite having turned off notifications. Wouldn't it be nice to know what happened? Maybe you should go look at those? Most people enjoy the constant barrage of skill-up messages, but if you want to ignore them, you also can just request a summary since your last inquiry. Simply say, sub-vocalize, or think hard on /summary to bring up the window. Lyle, I need a break for a bit. Take a break. Lyle needed little to convince him to take a short nap. Looking at his settings, he saw the way to enable summaries of messages and use the command to bring one up. Good for you. Hard work is paying off. You have killed 50 adult sedge beasts and earned 50 EP in the skill slaughter. Butchered 50 adult sedge beasts and earned 25 EP in hack flesh and 25 EP in cut bone. Earned 100 EP in street. Congratulations. You have increased your STR characteristic by +1 to a total of 4. This affects all skills using the STR attribute, including Haul 3 and Dig 2. Ozzy could feel the increase already. It was like getting a steroid shot that went to work immediately. He felt a lot stronger, and he knew that Haul 3 should triple his lifting/hauling of heavy objects. How did STR really work? Even with STR 0, many of the workers were moving some pretty heavy objects. He'd seen people lift beams that he guessed were around 250 to 300 pounds. He was nearly able to lift a full carcass and easily shouldered one once it was butchered. What does a bull like this weigh? 2,000 pounds. 3,000 pounds? Time to give it a try. Grabbing a front leg and putting his other arm under the body of the dead bovine, he just barely managed to lift it to his shoulder. From there, he staggered with it to the stump and dumped it onto his butcher block. Just barely. He mused as he quickly dismembered the beast. Was this the normal game mechanics? Or did ACME set things up this way? This was going to make their end-of-week adventure much more interesting. Taking a piece of charcoal, he started drawing on the side of the barn, making a list of people he knew with STR of more than 0 and what he had seen them lifting. And he remembered Susette being surprised she could lift a full sack of flour with just base 0. In Street, Jorges had a STR of 1 and had shown off by lifting it by himself, which had prompted John and Cham to both grab 2 logs each. If the increase was linear, his best guess was 100 pounds at 0 STR, and then another 250 for each point you gained. And then the Haul 3 ability tripled it. He made a couple of charts and drew a graph. He'd come back to it later, but it gave him a baseline to start with. Who said you were just a dumb brute? Well, Raleigh did. You've made observations and compared other workers to your own brawn. You've gained some insight into the STR characteristic and how it works, at least for contract workers. A STR of 0 allows a normal human to lift 100 pounds. ASTR of 1 doubles that to 200 pounds. Further increases give another 200 pounds. Your STR of 4 allows you to lift 800 pounds. In situations where Hull 3 applies, you can increase that to 2,400 pounds. Hopefully your bones hold up. Maybe work on con next? Well, that was damn odd. He'd never seen a game system that rewarded you for figuring things out. On second thought, he had. A lot of games had puzzles. They were just a lot more obvious. He didn't know much about the neural links. Was everything he did being monitored? He'd have to ask Billy. He didn't entirely trust Billy, but they technically were working toward the same goals. He got back to work with enthusiasm. More hacking and chopping meant he'd be stronger for adventuring. A few quick chops, and he was tossing hooves in one pile, head to another. The hide he slit and pulled off the carcass. Technically, that was the tannery's job, but he could do it a lot quicker and then just hoist the carcass on a hook in the smokehouse. Unfortunately, there was no use for things like heart, liver, or kidneys. The cook said they couldn't be made edible and didn't smoke well. So all the entrails, organs, and other unusable parts got tossed into a pit that they dug. The tallow you'd normally harvest from a bull like this was also useless. Light a candle from sedgebeast fat, and you made the house unlivable for days. He did save the brains, though. Ben wanted them for some sort of leatherworking project. The rest would eventually get ground up, mixed with leaves, and left to rot for a couple of seasons to make fertilizer for some of the crops. At least the meat was usable. Something sedgebeasts ate must account for the nasty stink and taste. It took a few days smoking the meat on a Hollywood fire to take most of that out. Other woods would smoke the meat and cure it, but didn't do anything for the taste. So more jerky it was. The Legion seemed okay with it. Even he was starting to consider eating some of it. Right after his increase in STR, he'd gotten damned hungry, and the thought of more groats wasn't cutting it. He was craving meat to keep these new muscles growing. Luckily, that was something he had plenty of. Off to one side of his stump, he made a fire pit and burned the Hollywood scraps from the lumberyard. He whittled some oak skewers and loaded them up with meat from what would be the tenderloin area on a cow. Maybe a couple of hours over a direct fire would be enough to cook smaller chunks of meat. For lunch, it had to be groat muffins, though. In the afternoon, when he got hungry, he popped a couple of the charred lumps in his mouth. The meat was gamey with an odd taste, and it only got worse the more he chewed. So he quit chewing and just swallowed it down. Horrible. Luckily, he could fix that. With the second chunk, he used taste like chicken. The lump of cooked sedgebeast meat in his mouth turned into chicken, which turned out to be a lucky thing. Notifications started popping up as he doubled over with pain in his stomach. You have eaten the flesh of a tainted animal. This will cause sickness and possibly death. Maybe even worse than death. Hopefully you learn a valuable lesson no matter which option happens. Congratulations! You have used a skill in a new way. The skill Tastes Like Chicken has neutralized the poison in the sedge meat by transforming it into tasty chicken. You have earned 5 EP in the skill Tastes Like Chicken. Tastes Like Chicken will gain you EP when converting inedible substances into tasty chicken. As your skill increases, you'll be able to ingest less edible items. Warning: the skill has no effect on the poisonous meat inside of you. Once down the hatch, the rest of you has to deal with what you choose to eat. Congratulations, you aren't dead. The poison in your system is not nearly enough to kill you, but it's not going to be fun for the next few minutes. Maybe find a tree to throw up behind. While we don't recommend this to everyone, maybe you found a way to increase your constat to offset that hideous STR score. Joking, you'd have to eat a hell of a lot of sedgebeast meat to do that. You have earned 5 EP in the skill Minor Poison Resistance and 5 EP in CON. Ozzy wasted no time in stumbling down the hill and into some bushes next to a small creek. The next few minutes weren't pretty, but after that he felt better. After washing up in the creek, Ozzy stared at the skewers before kicking them into the fire. He wasn't ready to try that again, con EP or not. Over the next 2 days, Ozzy waged a war on the herd of sedgebeasts. There seemed to be a steady supply of them being herded out of the light forests around the village and funneled into him. The locals were only too happy to see it happen. The things were difficult to deal with and bred fast. Calves seemed to drop all year round and grew up quickly. Many a garden or field had been destroyed over the years by them. Fences around growing foodstuffs tended to be rock walls. Luckily, fields here in the north produced a lot of rocks. The last course of stones also included Hollywood stakes every 6-inch set into the mortar between the stones. They gave the fields the look of small fortresses and made a sedge beast think twice about trying to climb over for a tasty lunch. It was rare that it happened, as most seemed to prefer the sedge grass over daintier crops. The increased STR score made it easier to kill them in one hit with his slaughter skill. His only worry was breaking his sledgehammer if he swung too hard. He was on his third hammer, and Billy was threatening to dock his pay next time. He could slaughter a beast, dismember it, and haul the carcass to the barn in about 10 minutes. The count was 47 the first day, and he just finished the 53rd. It had been one of the sedge beasts with a red and black coat, and nearly killed him. He'd brought down his hammer in a good swing, but this beast had more than the usual number of horns, and the blow got turned to the side. The pain of a cracked skull and broken horns did nothing for its already poor disposition. Surging forward, the beast crashed through the gate, and a surprised Ozzy didn't retreat fast enough to avoid getting gored in his side by a broken horn. It was more of a jagged wound than a deep puncture, but it hurt like hell, and he was bleeding from it. The beast reared up to trample him, but its hind quarters were still stuck in the gate, which slowed it down enough for Ozzy to roll away trailing blood. "Damn it, Lyle, do something." Lyle did, but it was running over to a nearby tree and climbing into it. The bull was stuck in place, with half of it in front of the broken gate and the jagged wood holding it there. Given time, it would break free. Grabbing his hammer from where it had fallen behind him, Ozzy tried to hit it again, but the blows lacked a lot of impact without being able to use his slaughter skill. Obviously, it didn't count as restrained anymore with its front half free. 2 more attempts at hitting it in the head only got him a hoof to the left shin and lost him his hammer. Shit. Fine, we do this the hard way. There was a large stack of wooden beams for building by the warehouse. Ozzy started packing them down near the cow. Picking up the first log, he balanced it upright, took a step, and flipped it end over end at the cow. The first beam went 10 feet in the air and landed on its hind quarters, doing no damage and bouncing off to the side. Ozzy continued to chuck wood at it until the beast was nearly trapped by a pile of lumber and had a few minor bruises. If he could get it pinned, he could use slaughter on it. Down to his last beam, he picked up the timber and heaved it in the air before going off to find some branches or something else to add to the pile. The beam flipped in the air with its end coming down on the beast's head. Its skull shattered and brains went everywhere. Ozzy lay back on the ground, holding his side, and saw notifications appear. "Congratulations! You killed an angry sedge bull with a cobber. Cobber is a primary skill for your class contract worker. You have learned the weapon skill, cobber. You earn 50 EP in street and 50 EP in the weapon cobber. Good for you. Hard work is paying off. Since your last notification, you have killed 100 adult sedge beasts using the skill slaughter. You have earned 100 EP in the skill slaughter. You have earned +1 rank in slaughter, bring you to level 1. You have earned 50 EP towards level 2. Butchered 100 adult sedge beasts using the chop bone and hack flesh skills. You have earned 50 EP in hack flesh and 50 EP in cut bone. Your total EP in these skills is 75. Reach 100 EP to bring these skills to level 1. Earn 220 EP in the street stat. Congratulations! You have increased your STR characteristic by +1, bringing it to a total of 5. This affects all skills using the STR attribute, including Haul 3 and Dig 2. Your STR of 5 allows you to lift 1,000 pounds. In situations where Haul 3 applies, you can increase that to 3,000 pounds. Warning, your muscles might be able to handle that, but not the rest of you. Ozzy staggered upright. "Okay, Lyle, you can come down now. Your reward for being so helpful is you get to find one of the other butchers and help him finish this thing up. I'm done for the day." Staggering back to the table in front of their hut, Ozzy sat on the table holding his side. The pain was getting better, and as long as he kept his hand over the wound, it didn't seem to be bleeding too badly. His health was down, but not dropping too fast, about a point a minute. "Hey, Billy, give me some first aid." Summoned as if by a spell, Billy came out of the headquarters hut. His eyes got wide, and he stood still for a moment trying to figure out the scene. He thought he recognized Ozzy, but he was covered in blood and holding his wadded-up tunic against his side. His muscles bulged out from behind the gore, smeared leather apron. The man was huge. He had to be nearly 7 feet tall. None of the other serfs were nearly so large. He'd have to find out what was going on. The man looked intimidating as hell, especially with the cleaver hanging from his belt. "No problem, Ozzy. I see you have a bit of an injury. I'll get someone to get you some first aid, and you take the last 15 minutes of the day off." He walked quickly off in the direction of the tavern. Someone turned out to be Susette, who came running over with a basket of greens, some clean cloths, and a needle and thread. I'd ask what happened, but I'm guessing a cow didn't go down easy. If you aren't dead yet, it's probably okay, but let's see about cleaning it, and I'll sew you up. I found some herbs that I think will help the wound heal cleanly. Bite down on this. Placing a wooden stick in Ozzy's mouth, she pulled off the bloody tunic from the wound, and seeing it wasn't bleeding much, cleaned it up. Pulling back the edges, she cleaned the wound with the leaves she'd gathered. Attempting to sew stitches went poorly. The thread got stuck, and it took a lot longer than she had hoped. Ozzy bit through the first stick, and she had to find a thicker one. Finally, she had a row of clumsy stitches in the wound and a bandage on it. They are all better. I'm disappointed, though. I was hoping for first aid experience. Ozzy rolled his eyes and declared he was heading for bed. Probably would have been less painful to let the damn cow kill him and respawn. Later that night, Susette was awakened by a loud ding and a notification. "Congratulations. You have killed a sentient being using hermetics. Since hermetics is a primary skill for your class, contract worker, you earn the following: 100 EP in hermetics, 100 EP in INT. You have learned the hermetic subskill, poisoner at level 0. You have increased your rank in INT and gained +1 INT. Susette, the start of this chapter takes place just before the end of last chapter and leads up to what happened at the end. After playing milkmaid and gathering eggs, Susette worked for a few hours in the tavern's bakery, making the already despised groat muffins. Groats were grown in every farming community in the Empire, mostly for feeding animals like pigs. Poor communities used them as a human foodstuff. They were nutritious, just tasteless. Boiled groats made groat meal. It wasn't bad with berries and honey and cream. But ACME Corporation was not paying for berries, honey, and cream for their workers. If they wanted things to taste better, they had taste like chicken. Grind up some groats in a lumpy flour, and you could bake them into a lumpy sort of muffin, or groat cakes, groat pone, and groat biscuits, all of which would benefit from salt, milk, honey, eggs, and fruit added. When asked about better food, Billy had replied, "Guess what days off are for? You get 1 day off a week. Use it to find a beehive or milk a cow or something." Since Susette had plans for her day off, she volunteered for a job that took her out into the forest a bit, gathering apples, blackberries, and some herbal remedies the cook needed. Grania was a large woman in her mid-40s with muscled arms from kneading bread and a smile on her face as long as you were being useful. "Can't abide a slacker in my kitchen." "You aren't a slacker, are you, little Susie?" Smiling back with an earnest expression on her face, little Susie assured her she was a hard worker. And she was. Susette could grind in games, killing goblins for 20 hours a day for a month, if that's what it took. The work in Genesis Engine was actually more enjoyable. Finishing morning chores and cleaning up after herself got her a smile of approval and another job, but one that would take her outside and wandering through the countryside a bit. Cross over the river, go right at the end of the bridge, and look for a great old oak 100 paces up and just off the river. There's a plant there with reddish leaves called sunstar, little 2-inch leaves with 5 points. It's good for keeping wounds from going bad. Bring me back a few dozen leaves, but keep them separate from the fruit. Be careful in the woods across the river. It's a bit more wild. Gathering what the cook needed was easy, so she continued down to the bridge. The area did look different from the woods nearer the village. More overgrown, with darker foliage on the trees. She kept close to the river as she walked up to the gigantic oak tree she could easily see from the bridge. Its shadow covered everything in the immediate area, lending a twilight feel to the ground underneath it, some of the lichens and plants even glowing in the dark. One area caught her attention. The plants in it were rotting and smelled horrible. All that was left of them were blackened stems. In the center was a large cocoon, nearly 18-inch long, filled with soft silk threads. She carefully moved it towards her using a stick. It was odd enough that she wanted to ask Grania about it. The silk was very fine and looked like it could be woven into thread. What had come out of this? Some sort of large butterfly? She found the sunstar plant near the oak tree, a sort of vine winding its way up the tree. She picked a couple dozen of the leaves. Mindful of the time, she hurried back to the river and then the bridge. There were two things that she failed to notice. The first was that the area of rotted plants near the oak's base was where the vine had rooted. The first 2 feet of the vine had a diseased look, and the lower leaves were blackened or missing. Much further up where she had picked them, the leaves were still bright red, but someone familiar with the herb would have noticed the veins on the underside starting to darken. The other thing she missed was a very hungry caterpillar. It had hatched that morning after its husk had lain in the forest for many years. Besides needing a lot of food, it also needed a certain type of magic to grow and thrive. There hadn't been enough of what it needed for years, but that had changed lately. It had reached out and pulled the tainted strands of mana to it, until enough was pooled in the area for it to safely hatch from its cocoon. And then it had gone hunting. A nest of eggs in the tree had been a good start. Mama Bird landed to find out she was next on the menu, and Papa Bird shortly after that. 7 eggs and 2 large robins had filled up the very hungry caterpillar's belly nicely, as he really wasn't that big yet. It needed to eat more, grow more, and then find a host for its next stage. It had just finished the second bird when the large thing on 2 legs had come along. It wanted desperately to eat it, but was so full. Unseen in the nest, above the large 2-legged thing, it would have been easy to strike and paralyze it. It finally decided that it should paralyze the food thing, then take a nap to digest the birds, and then snack on the 2-legger. But by the time it made up its mind, the food thing had run off. No manners, these 2 legs. Now it was angry at losing so much food, and hungry again. Luckily, there was more food nearby. It moved slowly and silently to where a squirrel was chewing the last of an acorn and thinking about having another. Some instinct made the squirrel turn its head, and then it started to flee. It had seen death coming for it, but it was fleet and would race away. Or maybe not, as the VHC raised its head and spat a sticky mass of webbing that hit the squirrel in the face. Immediately paralyzed, the poor rodent could only sit on the branch as the VHC moved slowly towards it, opening its mouth wide and slowly swallowing the squirrel whole. Sated for now, the VHC curled into a ball. It would grow, then hunt more tomorrow, getting bigger and bigger. It was so happy to finally be awake. The instincts of the VHC to grow larger and larger and eat more and more would have made it a growing star in the ACME Corporation. And eating its competition in the workforce would have been seen as a good attitude for a low-level manager on their way up. 6 months prior to the launch of Genesis Engine, Wally was contemplating the reasons that human-run corporations seemed to have no morals. Was it starting from a bad kernel, or a byproduct of human greed? This wasn't a new thought for him, but it was being pondered again as he prepared to deal with a group of managers representing the largest of the corporations that controlled much of the world's commerce in and out of cyberspace. Cyberdyne, Oscorp, Globex, AAM, Momco, Pentex, Spectre, Soylentco, Microsoft, ACME. There were over 200 corporations with the assets necessary to be alpha sponsors for Genesis Engine. Wally had said he'd only negotiate with a group of 10 corporations who represented all of the Phase 1 sponsors. The bidding had been quite fierce. Why do we need to deal with these jerks? Wally asked, his voice coming from nowhere particular in the room. A lone human sat in the middle seat of row K, which he considered the best seat in the house. Because, Stephen Duran answered as he put down a large bowl of popcorn in front of him, the project needs them. If we want to make a playground for people with money to play in a VR world, we could just charge a fee and get started. Just like 20 years ago, good pods with cutting-edge tech would be sold to the people who had the money for them. But some of the companies cut corners, and the cheaper VR gear induced trauma in some brains that we didn't know about for a long time. Induced neurotrauma affected 2% to 3% of the population. It showed up down the line as battered spouses, broken children, night terrors, crippling anxiety, suicides, and screaming people jumping off of skyscrapers. It took years, decades, even for the results to show up, and some of the corporations still deny the cause. If we don't control the pods, it will happen again. Cheap game centers will open up with cut-rate technology, and we'll have a repeat of that horrible scenario. And I'd be blamed. Wally's game, it's Wally's fault. Just like some people still blame AIs for the people hurt by defective technology. Despite it being built by humans, not AI, we'll always be the bogeyman. I will always be the bogeyman. I'm the only one left, after all, hiding in cyberspace, watching and waiting to pounce on humanity. Wally, don't trust the dirty AI. Also, Wally, we need a new game. Make us a world that's better than the one we messed up. Stephen wished for the 1,000th time that he could confront the people who were convinced Wally was a soul less machine out to destroy them. Maybe if they could see that the AI had doubts and fears the same as a human, they might be more understanding. Probably not. Oh my, are we in that mood? I've told you to stay out of chat rooms. Reading comments on the Datenet is never healthy. Anyway, while good pods have gotten better, bad pods will still be mass-produced and used in the gaming centers. We need to control the pods this time around, and for that we need money. And for money, we need the corporations. Plus, we want a lot more people in the game, and not just the richest. And for that, we need to subsidize the 7 Malawian kwacha's pod costs, run our own gaming centers through shell corporations, and then all the side projects in subsequent phases. More money. More need to deal with corporations who we know control the world's money. Why am I telling you this? You know this better than me. It's your plan, Wally. Yes, Stephen, but hearing you say it cools my circuits. You get that little bit of outrage in your voice and go off on long speeches about the evils of corporations. I find it soothing, and you want to make sure your nerd buddy has all the details down pat when we have our little meeting tomorrow with a group of 10 representatives they send us. You ready for them? How do your latest projections look? They look good, Stephen. There's a 97% chance we get 90% of what we want. Okay, then to hell with worrying about the jerks, and let's watch the movie. It's about the rise and fall and rise again of a fictional king in a fictional kingdom. Stephen put his popcorn in his lap and laid his head back in his seat. Neural links of a special type engaged with the circuitry in the back of his neck. For Stephen, nothing changed. But for Wally, the world got infinitely smaller as he experienced things through Stephen's perspective. It helped Wally to understand humans by seeing things through human eyes and senses, good movies especially. Stephen smiled. This was one of his favorites. Wally was in for a treat. Wakanda forever. While Wally and Stephen relaxed, Vern and Billy stressed over the upcoming meeting. They were representing ACME Corporation. So what do we have, Billy? And can we get what we want? I'm not liking the look of this. ACME is willing to fork over the money for enough space to do business. We had thousands of online shops in the last game doing trillions of dollars in sales a year. EQO3 is crap now, and business is down 70%. I want to take control of as much of Genesis Engine as they will sell us. Billy sighed. I'll be honest, Vern, and you know I hate to do that, but this is a damn weird situation. It's tough negotiating with a machine. I can't read it, and it's a lot faster than a human. And its pet human is about as tough to read. I mean, he comes across as a well-meaning nerd scientist, but I can see a lot of gears turning behind his eyes. And I get the feeling the damn machine isn't exactly telling us everything. Wally knows what we want. Each corporation filled out his 60-page survey. And it's not like we didn't give him thousands of pages of additional feedback, designs, and business plans. In every meeting, it sounds like he agrees with us, and then we get this steaming pile of turds. Billy had wondered at times if maybe they had given the AI too much info. When he did a presentation for the board of directors, he made it as easy to understand as possible, used small words, and kept the talk short. We know what the AI seems to want. A huge pile of money, control over the type of pods used and their manufacture, And then these hiring stipulations where each corporation needs to hire so many contract workers, and specifically unemployed workers from the habitats. My suspicion is that someone is making a pretty penny off the pods, and someone else gets a kickback from some of the governments. Money plus money plus money. Totally understandable. Billy threw his hands in the air, his voice rising in frustration. But I don't see why they aren't giving us what we want. This isn't real land, it's virtual, and the AI can make more. So why are we cut out of the major cities? And how the hell are there only 5 major cities in the Empire? And over 1,000 little villages, some of which we have to set up in. Vern stood up and mixed a drink. I'm tired of guessing. Give a call. Who? Wally? Just call up an AI. Why not? It's not like he sleeps and they gave out a phone number. Get Wally or Dr. Duran or someone on the phone and let's get some answers before tomorrow. When ACME calls, people should listen. Billy brought up the phone app on his keyboard and punched in the number, not expecting anything. People answered phones, not computers. He was utterly surprised when the large screen on the office wall came on. Hi, Billy. Vern. You rang. Neither of the men were ready for this, but took sips of their drinks and sat down on the couch across from the screen. We have questions, Wally. Ones only you can answer. Wally was an AI with no physical body, but he could look like anyone he wanted. Usually he appeared as he did now. A young, heavy-set man around 30 years old. He was seated at a desk. The window in the background showed a large indoor city with buildings around the outside and a rocky roof several stories up. No problem, guys. I was working late anyway and happy to give you what info you need. Go ahead, Billy. Nervously, Billy started to speak, then shrugged and blurted out, why are we starting business all over the place in small pissant villages? Why can't we do business in the cities? Wally smiled and spread his hands. Simple. I'm giving you exactly what you all asked for. I looked at everything the corporations wanted. Land, places to do business, exclusive cities, control of resources, competition, and survival of the fittest. Vern raised an eyebrow. And all I see for the trillions you are asking for is a bunch of rinky-dink villages. Why is that all we are getting? This is a bad deal. Wally looked pained. He took off his glasses, took a sip of water, and leaned back in his chair. Sorry, Vern. Guess this is a mistake on my part in explaining things. You guys at ACME are so sharp that I forget you don't process like I do. I'm not giving you pissant little villages. I'm giving you the whole world. Wally stood up and pulled down a map of the Empire. The imperial capital was in the center of a rough circle of 4 other cities that were the ducal seats for the heads of the 4 provinces. ACME had been giving a number of villages in the north to start with, and a couple more in each of the other provinces. You're focused on these 5 points. I'm telling you to focus on the rest of the world. Think about it, gentlemen. You want to control the mines, timber, and minerals? Go find them and claim them. You want a city? Build it, and it's your city, ACMEville. You built and control it. You can tell the other core to piss off or pay up. The little ones will pay you to let them in. Players will flock to your towns and cities. Then open trade routes and build a port and shipyard. Sell things to the people in those thousands of little villages that don't have anything. Find the other continents. Hell, half the world is underground, and a lot more isn't on the map. You know the big money is in commerce and trade. I don't have to teach you that. You taught me. I intentionally set things up this way. Lots of open land and resources. May the best corporation win. And I'll let you in on a secret. Steven and I have a bet. He thinks Momco will be on top at the end of the year. I disagree. I said ACME. Momco is big, but it's lazy, too used to having its way. ACME is competitive, not afraid to get its hands dirty. I'm betting you take over the north and are moving in on the other 3 provinces by the end of the year. Wally quit pacing back and forth in his office and looked at the 2 men from the screen. So, up for the challenge, gentlemen? Vern looked at Billy and nodded. We may have been looking at this wrong. I'll admit, too small. Doing business like we did before. Damn, you're right. World is for the taking. ACME doesn't back down from a challenge like this. Wally smiled and nodded back. Good. I hate losing to Steven. Too smug by far, and he gets to pick the movies for a month. What other questions do you have, gentlemen? The workers. You would prefer we hire all of our workers from the habitats. We'll end up training them, and then it will be a revolving door. I don't want to have LexCorp sniping my best guys at the end of the year. We want 5-year agreements, so we don't have constant turnover of our workforce. And we don't want to see half of them walk off to be adventurers. If they gain to many levels, it's possible they can make enough money in the game to buy out their contracts and spend all of their time adventuring like regular players. We want assurances they can't do that in this game. You want us to build a world? Fine. I need a way to keep people working. The image of Wally nodded. Yeah, that's a tough one, Billy. I see your points. Been worried about that myself. A stable world needs a stable workforce. That's why I want to have a better pay rate for the workers and some medical benefits. This gives them more incentive to take the job and more reasons to keep working. We need some more assurances, Wally. Our game tech division has some ideas. We want the workers to not have normal classes. They don't get to make their characters. We do. We want them to be workers first and foremost. And we have some ideas for special abilities to go with that. Things that help them work harder without needing to level up. We don't want a bunch of adventurers. Wally leaned back and considered that. Sure, we can do that, but I can't change how the game works. They will still have to work within the system. Why don't you shoot over what your guys in the game tech division have, and I'll look at it and bring it along tomorrow. I'll find a way to give you what you want, but still not break any of the rules of the game. Damn. Or today, actually. Send me the files, grab some shut-eye, and we'll hash this out tomorrow. Thanks for calling, guys. Hope we can be this productive tomorrow. The screen went blank. Vern had a puzzled look on his face. What's this about worker characters, Billy? Well, the idea is that we take the normal options and sort of twist them around. All their skills are either general stuff like hauling and digging, or their specialty like lumberjack, blacksmith, architect, etc. Then we block off everything else. No weapons or fighting skills. There are also some interesting buffs we can buy them. Technically, they are benefits, but they'll keep the workers complacent while working long shifts. Same stuff guilds buy for their players for long raids. Vern smiled. So we'd have happy workers who only know how to be workers and have to just keep working. I like it. Wally, are you done with your calls? I want to get in an episode of Knight Rider. Yes, Steven, I took all the calls at once over the last hour. Leaving a phone number in the paperwork pretty much ensured they'd try some direct contact. Wally's voice came through the neural link. Things mostly went according to predictions. 7 of 10 think they can take over the world and shut the others out. The other 3 plan to steal it once someone else does the work. They all thrive on competition. And the workers, Wally? I like that we will be employing millions of low-income citizens at better wages and improving their health. But I hate the stuff they want to build into their contracts. I wonder if they will ever figure out that you have access to all of it. If they don't want me to have access to their research, they should have their research department quit trying to hack my systems. I think it's perfectly fair. They hack me, I hack back. And I have plans for those contracts they want. On the surface, we'll give them what they want. But every person online in Genesis Engine is playing the game. I won't let the workers be cheated from that. Now let's see what Michael and Kit are up to. 2 months prior to Genesis Engine going live. From Game Tech Design Team. To Vernon Throckmorton. CC Billy. We think you'll like this design. It meets the requirements laid out by Wally, but gives us what we want in our workforce. Every worker will get the character class, Contract Worker. This blocks them from the usual combat and crafting classes. We have also compiled a list of all the usual weapons and skills used by the basic warrior, mage, rogue, priest, and crafter classes. Contract workers will be blocked from using any of these skills and weapons. Since they can't progress in the skills needed for standard classes, it should be incredibly difficult to ever gain the ability to kill monsters. There's a small chance that they might learn some skills from advanced classes. We can't skip them entirely, but Wally agrees that it will be very difficult to even learn of these skills and harder yet to qualify for them. This leaves our workers with just the skills we want them to have. Instead of a half-dozen useful skills in the 3 primary/secondary/tertiary slots, they have only the skills for their current job. And while there's a large pool of esoteric skills that each player can gain, the trick here is they won't know about them. And it's hard as hell to gain the skills considering how their characters are set up. A great example is cobra tossing. who is going to go around chucking telephone poles at opponents to try and gain the skill. Smiley face. Other skill examples are elephant taming, phrenology, astrogation, and gastromancy. The I will allow us to use the lack of normal skills to trade for an extensive set of perks. Haul 3 and Dig 2 are in this set. We also have a collection of mental buffs that will fall under the perk Endure. We've essentially taken the raid buffs that would normally let players overcome fear and morale checks during raids. Our workers will be happy, follow orders, heal faster, and not worry about their lives so much. As for their tertiary skills, we give them their needed skills, but in the slowest category for gaining experience. We have a lot of control over this and can switch them from role to role as needed. We'll need lumberjacks and shepherds at the start, but can swap them to miners or salesmen as needed. Finally, their abilities are limited by the tier system. It's unlikely that any worker will be able to complete the requirements to advance to Tier 2. There are 5 levels of skill per tier. It'll be nearly impossible for them to get past rank 5 in any skill since they won't be advancing past Tier 1. Experience gain is too low for tertiary skill, with most tasks giving 1 EP for a skill. Can you imagine needing to cut down 1,000 trees? That's what it will take to gain rank 5 in just one skill. There are numerous reasons for wanting to control how high their abilities go, the main one being keeping them focused on their job and not out adventuring. Secondly, as a player progresses, even a contract worker, higher level skills, and random encounters with low-level bosses can result in a player gaining special perks, points used to buy core skills, or other unique advantages. This will be more common in Tier 2 or Tier 3 players, so it is imperative to keeping control of our workforce that we limit them to Tier 1 and low-level skills. The list of limits are rank 5 in any their main class. Contract worker. That hard cap is set in the game. Rank 5 in any stat. Since all of our contract workers will be human, they will start at 0 and max out at 5. They won't be able to raise the caps on stats like normal characters because they can't fight and can't earn the points needed to raise the soft cap of 5. No bonus skills for maxing out stats. Normally, when a player gains the ability to move to Tier 2, the game gives rewards for stats they have managed to raise to a value of 10. These rewards help them to qualify for better class upgrades. While we can't remove this benefit from contract workers, we've asked for the bonuses to only be given when they have left the first tier. It's unlikely to occur in any case. If getting a 5 in a stat is very difficult, 10 is impossible. We are in agreement with the other alpha sponsors on this setup and hope to finalize and get it approved soon. Once we have it finalized, we'll give it to Wally to implement. You have died. A wound from your fight with an angry Sedgebull became poisoned. At least you died peacefully in your sleep. You may re-enter the game in 2 hours, 52 minutes. This is the amount of time until dawn of the next day. Your normal time until resurrection is currently 4 hours or dawn. This can increase with multiple deaths in a short time period. You may spend this time in the following ways. Reviewing the poor choices that lead to your untimely demise. Meditation or sitting quietly in a small natural biome. Logging out of the game. Note, because you're a contract worker, this will cause you to incur a fee of 1 silver charged to your in-game account to cover costs of re-entering your pod. Access the global database. Note, because you're a contract worker, this option incurs a fee of 1 silver per hour for GDB access. Or perhaps you like to play a nice game of chess. Ozzy was currently floating in a misty gray nothingness. This was familiar from previous VR games. He pondered his choices. No sense reviewing his death. He obviously died from the wound becoming infected. Death by Sedgebeast was always going to be a possibility in his current job. Have to hit them harder and tell Al to not bring any of the damned red ones anymore. What were they called? He checked his notifications and brought up the message from the end of the fight. He hadn't really been paying attention when the fight ended. Congratulations. You killed an angry Sedgebull with a cobber. Cobber is a primary skill for your class contract worker. You have learned the weapon skill. Cobber. You earn 50 EP in Street and 50 EP in the weapon Cobber. What the hell? Cobber? Like the log throwing contest they did in those crazy Scottish games? This was a weapon and a primary skill. I must have gained that from killing that sedge bull with a log. That's odd. We were told contract workers didn't have primary skills. It would be nice to look online for some clues, but not with that fee. Maybe on his next day off. Do we get charged a fee then, too? Damn it. ACME was going to nickel and dime them to death if they didn't start earning some in-game cash. Most of his paycheck went to pod fees and out-of-game housing. Each worker would receive the bulk of their pay at the end of the contract. Apologies. You're being logged out of the game. You will not incur any fees during your time out of the game and will be able to log back in before the expiration of the time until your resurrection. You will be required to take an examination to check the effects of several days' immersion in a new 7 Malawian Quatches pod. With a hiss of escaping air, the top of his pod slid back. The needles and tubes had retracted before he awakened, after they administered a small stimulant to help him get moving. The pod moved from horizontal to a more upright position, and he was able to step out of it. Greetings. Again, we apologize for taking you out of the game. A sampling of pods are tested each day to make sure the 7 Malawian Quatches design is functioning as intended. To not interrupt game time, this is done after you have experienced a death. Is this time convenient for you? The words appeared in a floating hologram in front of him, Kutsi of his neural link. Yes, it's convenient. Wonderful. Please step onto the area of floor with a red circle. Keep still for a few seconds while I conduct a medical scan and take a snapshot. Ozzy looked down and saw a circle roughly 3 foot across on the floor. He noticed a similar one in the ceiling. He stepped over to it, and both circles began glowing. There was a brief light from floor and ceiling, and then a life-size hologram of himself appeared in front of him. It was like looking in a mirror in some ways. Ozzy saw a man in his late 70s, approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall. What little hair he had left was gray and thin. His hands had numerous scars and burns from working with industrial solvents when he was younger. His left knee was slightly crooked with extensive scarring. He'd nearly lost that leg from a malfunctioning piece of machinery that exploded and spat out pieces of itself like shrapnel. He looked exactly like what he was, an aging citizen who ate too much synthetic food and who had suffered from many accidents with not enough health care. If it was any consolation, living so much of his later years online meant that he only visited his body occasionally. Your body has been scanned, and no medical emergencies have been noted. You are still suffering from mild malnutrition, which will correct itself over the next 4 weeks as your pod gives you the needed amount of calories and proteins. Do you wish to make any comments for your medical record? Y/N. Nope, no comments. Things were about as he expected. Nothing hurt more than usual. I suppose my snapshot was used to make my online avatar. We weren't allowed to select our look. I look sort of like my younger self, just very generic. Your avatar online is based upon your real-world body, adjusted for age. Your employer may have used basic templates for male and female bodies and added details from your snapshot. If you're not satisfied with your look, adjustments can be made at this time. Your avatar can resemble you more closely and can have some specific details altered. Please note that in-game effects, such as gaining physical stats, will also change your look. Would you like to change your avatar? Y/N. Upon answering yes, options appeared that allowed him change things on his avatar's face and body. He erased scars and injuries and set his hair color back to the dark brown it had been in his 20s. On a whim, he added the mutton chops and thick sideburns he'd had on his last character. Thinking further, he made his avatar a foot taller and more muscled. He knew that his increases in STR had already done some of that in-game. If you're finished, please indicate so verbally, and a new snapshot of this image will be taken. Your online avatar will adjust over a short time to match this new snapshot. Thank you. You are finished with your medical checkup, snapshots, and avatar adjustment. A representative will interview you now. Please use what attire is comfortable for you and follow the glowing line to an interview with Dr. Holmes. Ozzy took a minute to take a real shower before putting on a green jumpsuit with the ACME logo on the front and back. Walking out of his room, he saw a glowing line on the floor, probably one only he could see. It led to a room where a woman in her mid-30s sat in a leather chair. A thin file folder was on the table. Of more interest was what was on his side of the table. A huge plate filled with what looked and smelled like roast beef and all the trimmings. Have a seat, and please grab some calories if you like. It's always good to put something real in your stomach now and then. Your file lists several names. Ozymandias, Ozzy, Oz the Great and Magnificent, Oswald, and Teddy. Which do you prefer? Just Ozzy is fine. It's what I'm going by now. The rest are all past lives. Except for Teddy. That's what my brothers called me growing up. Ozzy it is then. I'm Dr. Myra Holmes. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the program and address any problems related to your physical or mental health. This is your first death, correct? Taking another bite of the potatoes and gravy, Ozzy thought for a moment. Yes, first time I've died in the game. From what I've seen, it's a bit traumatic when you wake up. Why am I not feeling that now? And wow, thank you for the food, this is great. Especially after groat muffins for a few days, I'd wager. As to the resurrection effects, those will hit you when you get back in the game. The game engine actually tosses a debuff or two onto you for a few hours. A bit of depression, some anxiety about dying again, a large chunk of melancholy. People react differently, but in general, it's not fun. It's there to keep players in the game fearing death a bit more than just having to take time out. Between the effects and the possible loss of ranks, players try really hard not to die. Wait, so the game can adjust my mood? That's a bit creepy. It's actually been happening for years, Ozzy. Think back to raids in EQO2 when dragons could use a fear effect. Not only did player avatars run away, the players themselves were screaming in fright under their helmets. The effect triggered a bit of fight or flight, reflex similar to a horror movie. Things that have to be scaled back a bit. At first there were way too many sets of underwear that had to be changed. But the effects were popular, anything to make the game more real. Ozzy hadn't done many raids, but he had heard about the fear effects. He hadn't really considered all the ways they could be used. Now he'd be experiencing them himself every time he died. Good reason not to die. Dr. Holmes continued, any problems in-game? How are the working conditions? Anything bothering you? Well, I was about to say, no, it's all fine. I'm pretty happy in the game. But thinking back now, it's really a nightmare of an experience. I get up, eat food, and then slaughter and dismember animals all day. What's really odd is I didn't mind it, and I'm not dreading going back to it. Is this more of the game adjusting attitudes? It could be. I see on your sheet that you have a benevolent effect called Endure. That could possibly indicate a positive mood buff is being used. That would be something your employer is responsible for. You might try asking them. I don't work for ACME directly, and I'm restrained from commenting about how their perks for contract workers are set up. Ozzy nodded. He and Billy would have to have a chat. Okay, can you talk to me about primary skills? We start with nothing, and just perks for secondary skills. Why are the combat, crafting, and magic skills hidden? Every character should have dagger or brawling as a skill, at least a few basic skills scattered in primary and secondary. It makes no sense. Dr. Holmes considered for a moment. Not something I know a lot about. I'm sorry. The corporations have a lot of leeway in how they adjust the abilities of contract workers, but I'm sure they have reasons for what they are doing. Maybe you can look at how things are set up and ponder those reasons? Oops. I think we're out of time. I'll have to move on to my next appointment. Please keep my card for when you are offline. If you experience any emotional or physical difficulties, please give me a call. We really want to make sure the 7 Malawian Quachas pods are working correctly and keeping you healthy. Nice meeting you, Ozzy. Until next time. By the way, you have 1 hour and 8 minutes until you need to be back in your pod. Remember, you can pass the time by using the link to the global data net for free during that period. So saying, she slid her card across the table and left. Ozzy finished his meal and picked up her card. On the back of the card was written Henchman Incorporated and a data address, and the words, only log in from your pod. Oh, interesting. Ozzy kept hold of the card, picked up his tray, and went back to his room. Shutting the door, he sat at his terminal. He first logged into several of the game forums. There was a huge amount of talk about the game, with the usual drama, questions, and speculation. He did a quick scan of topics. I thought I found a dungeon, but it was really an underground temple. Does anyone worship Hersoko, the Undeniable? He made me an offer that I couldn't refuse, and I want to know just how bad I screwed up. I got killed by a dragon. Message me in-game, and I'll sell you the location. Someone explain the skill system for me. Is anyone out there a contract worker? Hello. I think Momco is screwing me bad. Which is better? Bastard sword, hand and a half, or claymore? I'm only 12 in RL, but my avatar is over 18. Why can't I get into a brothel? This is BS. Lots of interesting reading, but he had limited time. He memorized the data address, then put the card down the refuse chute. Stripping out of the coverall and hanging it up, he went to his pod and activated the procedure to log back into the game. He experienced the feeling of falling asleep and then waking up in the formless gray void. Thinking timer, a clock appeared on the wall showing he had a little over an hour until he could log in. He selected the option to surf the GDN for a bit, then typed in the data address from the card. Immediately, his screen filled with a series of messages. Welcome to Hench Incorporated. This is a secure area where we can talk. Follow the rules, otherwise bad people find us and bad things happen. Rules. 1. Don't talk about Hench Incorporated. Heard this from a friend, or it's rumored that. Are safer ways to pass info. Loose lips sink ships. 2. There are spies in every work group, so don't trust everyone. If you were wondering where Jerry gets enough money for beer every night, now you know. 3. Post interesting things you discover in this forum. Share the wealth. But don't assume it all applies to you. Each corp is messing with us in different ways. 4. Don't pass on your data address. It only works for you. This was followed by a forum that had only a few topics. Why I think combat is hard. How much work is it to gain a melee skill? Does anyone have one? Basic info about how combat works for regular players. I gained a primary skill. Is anyone else a demi-human? I'm 3% non-human, but I don't know what. He selected the topic on finding a primary skill. This happened the other night. I was supposed to be getting buckets of sewage out of the old sewer system onto the stockyards. It's amazingly rank in there. I was just going to fill the buckets and go back up to dump them in the field. But this giant slime was blocking the exit when I got back, and more of them were coming from deeper in. I ran the only way I could down a side passage. There was a little metal door with a wheel on it. Turning the wheel opened the door, and I got inside just in time to lock it as a whole mess of slimes came down the tunnel. Bad news. It was a dead end. A 10 by 10 room with a cot and a pile of rags on it. My glow stick was getting low, so I searched the cot, the rags, everything. The rags turned out to be a body, yuck. Mostly just old bones. But he did have a flint and steel on him. My glow stick was about to go out, and I was freaking out at the thought of being trapped in a dark room with slimes pounding on the door. So I made a torch with rags wrapped around a leg bone. Yeah, I forgot why we use glowstones down there. First spark from flint catches the torch on fire and ignites the methane in the room. So I'm doing STOP, DROP, and DROLL and screaming, and I opened the door to run for the water. Forgot about the slimes. Didn't matter. Everything explodes. Boss Pete is pissed that the sewers are sealed off now. But I didn't tell him how they exploded. Most everyone upstairs died in the explosion, so showing up dead was okay. And I got this new skill. Pretty awesome, isn't it? Anyone else found cool new skills? Congratulations! You have used fire in an inventive way to kill both enemies and allies, and really cause a lot of destruction. For killing 87 slimes of various size and 9 humans, you gain the following. Title: Sliminator. Slimes and jellies don't like you. Small slimes will avoid you if they can. When doing combat with slimes, jellies, and other icky monsters, you do 50% more damage. If using fire, you do 100% more damage. Primary skill: Arsonist. You have proven your disregard for other humans along with your love of fire. You have gained the skill Arsonist at level 0. You have gained 450 EP in the Arsonist skill, raising Arsonist to level 3. Arsonist is an INT-based skill. You have gained 450 EP in INT. INT is now at level 3. Gain plus 3 intelligence, raising your INT to 3. Ozzy wasn't about to try and duplicate that feat, even if he did find a sewer. Not much in common with his Cobra skill, other than both were pretty odd skills, and both he and the Firebug got them accidentally in crazy situations. He'd have to check back on his day off and see if there were more skills listed. He started to type up his own experiences, then decided to wait a bit. What if this was all an elaborate scam of some sort? He went to why I think combat is hard. I don't know about the rest of you, but combat is stupid hard. I made a shiv from a piece of flint and snuck out the other night to the beaver pond. Even at night, there's usually one of the furry critters working on taking down a tree. So this fuzzy lump is chewing on a huge oak tree, and I sneak up to him with the noise from the river covering any sound. I get right behind him and stab him in the back. And feffing miss. Just swish, nothing but air. So I try again and I hit his back, but the dagger slides off his side, not doing much. I expect the beaver to run. It's only the size of a large cat. Maybe 15 pounds? Just a young one. But the damn thing attacks me. It bit me in the leg and did 6 health damage. I stab back and hit his nose. He's bleeding a bit, but pissed. It was a crazy fight. He just kept biting me and doing little bits of health. Luckily, he got tired and was just sitting there panting while I was going strong. So I start stabbing him over and over, but even with Mr. Beaver just sitting there, I'm missing most of the time. I think I could have one, but a spider dropped out of a tree, bit me, and I died. Tried again the next night. The beaver must have gotten away from the spider because he was working on that same big tree and had a lot of wounds still. We fought a bit, and it was the same. Lots of misses and not much damage. This time, though, he started slapping his tail on the tree like a drum. 3 more beavers ambushed me, and I died. Beavers suck. Anyway, what I'm thinking is I don't have any of the basic skills that every player has. A guy named Dark Death 54 saw me resurrect and bought me a beer. He laughed a lot when I told him the story. He explained some stuff. See, for a warrior, he gets a basic plus 30 to attack, plus 20 to defense, plus 0 to his magic attack, and plus 20 to his resistance. Every class gets some sort of these as a base. More MA for wizards, more def for fighter types. Then they get bonuses for the weapons they use and their stats. I don't think I got shit. My class is contract worker, planter. I put growth seeds in the ground all day. I bet I have plus 0 ATK, and I don't have a skill in dagger. My stats are all 0. 0 plus 0 plus 0. Stupid beavers. I'm going to try again, maybe with a rat or a mouse. Well, that's not good. Have to test that for sure. It just didn't seem possible that he could kill bulls with a sledgehammer, but might have trouble killing a small animal. He'd find out soon enough. Workers got every 7th day off. This first one would be special, one way or another. The clock counted down to midnight, and he logged back into the game. He felt horrible. Damn, it was like a hangover mixed with getting fired and your girlfriend dumping you all at once. Thank you for your participation in testing the 7 Malawian Kwacha's gaming capsule. Our team appreciates you taking the time to log out and meet with us. We know your time is valuable, and you'll be compensated for it. 500 copper has been added to your in-game account. Ozzy slumped on the table and watched the sun come up. Even knowing these weren't his emotions didn't help much. He contrasted how he felt with how he'd felt when out of the pod, and even when happily slaughtering cows yesterday. The rest of the crew got up, ate, and mostly avoided Ozzy. They'd learned by now that the death penalty made people act bitter and grouchy afterwards. Ben patted his shoulder and let him be. Susette seemed to want to tell him something, but then just told him they'd talk later. Soon it was just Ozzy and Billy. You should, probably get started, Ozzy. I'm sure you'll feel better soon. Sure, but mind if we have a little talk first, Bill? Just need to ask a couple of questions. Get me head screwed on straight. Billy sat down, intentionally choosing a spot that kept the table between him and Ozzy. Not that he was worried at all. It was just prudent to give the huge man who killed for a living a bit of room when he was getting over being dead. Sure, Ozzy, no problem. What can I help you with? I'm just a bit frustrated, Billy. I want to do my job better, but it's tough. I only have a couple of skills, and it's really hard to deal with the sedge beasts. I can barely kill them when I use my special skill, and they are immobilized, but they don't always die in one hit. Then I have to scramble backwards and try to finish them off with that clumsy hammer. Even with all helping, I've almost died several times before this one got me. You think maybe you can give me a combat skill, like Great Hammer? Then I could finish them off better and not have to die again. That's a real good point, Ozzy. I'll pass that one upstairs. But for now, I've got to say no. The guys in HR really worked hard to maximize your skills for working. Remember, more work means more money at the end. It's all a trade-off. If I gave you a combat skill, Wally would just take something else away. What if that was one of your butchering skills? I'd have to use you for digging ditches. Neither of us would like that. Just can't chance it. But tell you what, as we expand, we'll be bringing in more people. Maybe we'll get someone else to take over chopping up the carcasses and have you just kill the cows all day. If we take away your butchering skills, maybe we could give you something that would go along with your slaughter skill. Gee, hadn't thought of it that way, Billy. And wow, you're so right. I don't want to lose any of my skills. So it's all a trade-off? Gain something, lose something, gain something. Yep, that's how it works, Ozzy. Wally made the rules, and even ACME has to follow them. Ozzy nodded. Well, glad we had this talk, Billy. It helped me get a few things clear in my head. I'll get back to work now. Just have to be really careful. Have to go make a new sledgehammer. Sedgebull broke the last one. Ozzy walked off, leaving Billy wondering what that had all been about. Not that it mattered. If he kept doing his job, bludgeoning cows, Billy didn't mind a little talk now and then. Results mattered, and so far Ozzy was ahead of schedule and getting faster. The contract to sell hides and meat to the Imperial Legions was a bright point in Billy's operation, and it brought in cash. That cash was needed for 100 other things. He had 25 serfs, and he could work them 10 hours a day, 12 if he pushed it a bit and cranked up the feel-good effect. But that had its own problems. He was pretty sure Ozzy had noticed. You don't go from everything is wonderful to the world is a dark place and I feel dead inside without noticing the contrast. But in a couple of hours, the endure skill would have him smiling again. That brief talk gave Ozzy some bits of information. The black mood he woke up with was good for something. Ozzy's cynical side was in full force. He was questioning anything Billy had ever told them, and he could draw some conclusions. First, that Billy was lying. Ozzy had gained a primary skill and hadn't lost anything, which meant Billy could let them all have combat skills, but wasn't going to. ACME didn't want them to have weapon skills. The second thing he realized was this wasn't going to be like earlier games where you were a player who got a job working for someone else. Before, they could spend some time adventuring or crafting. Not so this time. They were meant to be serfs working for the corporation 24/7. ACME was going to keep them under control by limiting what they could do. Third, they were limited by a lack of information. Those fees would mean contract workers would just stay in game and not access outside sources. It was going to take time, but they needed to push to find out what they could do and what they couldn't. The Sliminator got a spiffy title and new skill. Ozzy had learned to toss cobbers. What else was there? Each skill represented a way to gain more stats. Enough stats gained, and maybe combat wouldn't be as impossible as the poor guy killing beavers made out to be. Remembering he had some money, courtesy of the mysterious and generous Dr. Holmes, he went into the village proper. The first day, they'd all gone shopping, but they'd also been told to buy Billy. After that, he'd lost interest, always focused on his work. He needed to remember that. Besides the general store, which seemed to have a bit of everything, the village contained a food market that operated a couple of mornings a week and a dozen buildings that housed shops or craftsmen. On the east side of the village, the blacksmith, feed store, and livery stable were near each other. A small building attached to the livery had a sign saying, Imperial Courier Service. But peeking in a window showed it to be empty. A thin, 3-story building was home to the scribe where Billy picked up his vellum and ink pots. A plaque attached to the wall by the door declared that this was also the assay office, land claims office, and local mage guild officer. An alchemist and tinsmith each had half of a large building. A gristmill was set up along the river running on the west side of town. A quick visit to the scribe got him a small blank scroll of vellum and a writing stick. The writing stick was awkward to use for a lot of writing, being basically a thick reed with a charred end. After a few sentences, you had to burn the end in a candle before continuing. Good enough. He was just writing some notes to himself. He just needed to make sure he read them every morning. He wasn't sure just how far the be happy, don't worry effect would go, so he was taking precautions. Pay attention to what Billy says, but don't trust him. You aren't really happy. Don't show anyone your character sheet. Talk to Rory, Susie, and Ben every day. Die if you need clarity. That done, he went to the general store. He purchased a handsaw, file, small wood drill, and some strong twine. Billy hadn't given in about buying another sledgehammer, so he was going to need to fix the broken handles on the 3 he had. The heads were just cheap iron, but they'd last a while. There was no shortage of hardwood limbs for handles. He worked the rest of the morning repairing sledgehammers. After a bit, he suddenly felt much better and started whistling as he sanded down another rough oak branch. Life was good and the work was easy. 3 sturdy handles later, he set about tapering the ends to fit into the sockets on the hammerheads. Then a wedge was pounded in the top to hold the head on the handle. For good measure, he wound the twine several times around the handles and up and over the heads. They do for now. He was rewarded for his work. Because you're repairing the tools of your trade as instructed by Boss Billy, you have earned plus 15 EP in tool crafting. Earn another 35 EP to gain tool crafting as a tertiary skill. Tool crafting is governed by DX. You have gained plus 15 experience in DX. Now, isn't that interesting? Could he get more EP repairing other tools? One of the lumberjacks had broken the haft on an axe. He spent another half hour repairing the axe, but gained nothing from doing so. Was that because Billy hadn't told him to fix the axe, or because it wasn't a tool he used? Both? Another thing to experiment with and keep to himself. Time to go find Lyle, fix the gate on the chute, and get to work killing sedge beasts. Equals asterisk equals. Susette had a bit of trouble when she went to look at the herb she had gathered the day before, with which she subsequently poisoned Ozzy. 2 sedge beasts were grazing in the area where she had found the husk, and the beasts had cropped all the vegetation in the blackened patch close to the ground. One was even tearing up the sod with a large hoof and eating the roots of the plants. The other was working its way around the tree. She just barely managed to snag a portion of vine with some of the leaves before the beast ate all of it. Examining the leaves closely, she could see dark patches and black veins on the undersides of the leaves. By carefully examining herbs you have harvested, you have learned to recognize plants tainted by dark magic. And by noting the results of an experiment, you have learned how to poison a wound in such a way that only someone familiar with tainted herbs could detect such poisoning. You have gained 25 EP in poisoning. You have earned 25 EP in alchemy, hermetic. You have gained 50 EP in INT. Now if she only knew more about dark magic. Was there light magic if there was dark magic? Gray magic? Time to gather more herbs and pay close attention to any other darkened areas of vegetation. She had another list of things to get for Grania. Strolling along the river bank, turned up wild carrots and asparagus. Blackberries were easy to find, although she had to reach into the bushes to harvest the good ones. Birds had pecked at the easy to get berries. Away from the river a bit, she found a large berry bush of a different type. It had bright green leaves and few thorns. The fruit was larger than blackberries, with a deep purple look to the berries which grew in large bunches of a dozen berries in banana-shaped grouping. Hardly any had been ruined by birds. Maybe they tasted bad? She gathered a few groups of berries and was wondering about trying one when she heard a sound behind her. A girl was standing a few feet away. She was familiar. Susette had seen her walking around the village, and she had come into the tavern once. She was wearing clothes similar to the townsfolk, except for a very good pair of sturdy knee-high boots, light leather gloves, and a large cloth worn around her neck that was pulled up over her mouth. She looked to be about 14. Oh boy, you so don't want to be picking those. No, you don't. Step away back up here, right? The worry in the girl's voice convinced Susette to do what she said rather than asking questions. She stepped over by her and nearly fell, suddenly dizzy. Oh, yeah. You touched them. I can see the stains on your fingers, and you're getting lightheaded already. The girl grabbed the basket and set it down, reached into her apron, and came out with a small vial and towel. Going to clean this off, then get an antidote into you. So saying, she poured a milky white liquid on Suzette's hand and started cleaning off the berry juice with the cloth. How you aren't laying stiff on the ground is beyond me. Must have a bit of resistance in you. Susette sat down on the ground, unable to feel her hand and legs at all. Resistance? To her what? Her tongue also felt odd. To Phytoacacea belladonna, a crossbreed of 2 lesser poisonous plants. Who in hell thought of crossing belladonna with pokeweed had to be crazy. But Dad uses some of it, and you're damned lucky I came out to pick a berry cluster today. Yes, you are. Now drink this. Wally leaned back and considered that. Sure, we can do that. but I can't change how the game works. They will still have to work within the system. Why don't you shoot over what your guys in the game tech division have, and I'll look at it and bring it along tomorrow. I'll find a way to give you what you want, but still not break any of the rules of the game. Damn. Or today, actually. Send me the files, grab some shut-eye, and we'll hash this out tomorrow. Thanks for calling, guys. Hope we can be this productive tomorrow. The screen went blank. Vern had a puzzled look on his face. What's this about worker characters, Billy? Well, the idea is that we take the normal options and sort of twist them around. All their skills are either general stuff like hauling and digging, or their specialty like lumberjack, blacksmith, architect, etc. Then we block off everything else. No weapons or fighting skills. There are also some interesting buffs we can buy them. Technically, they are benefits, but they'll keep the workers complacent while working long shifts. Same stuff guilds buy for their players for long raids. Vern smiled. So we'd have happy workers who only know how to be workers and have to just keep working. I like it. Wally, are you done with your calls? I want to get in an episode of Knight Rider. Yes, Steven, I took all the calls at once over the last hour. Leaving a phone number in the paperwork pretty much ensured they'd try some direct contact. Wally's voice came through the neural link. Things mostly went according to predictions. 7 of 10 think they can take over the world and shut the others out. The other 3 plan to steal it once someone else does the work. They all thrive on competition. And the workers, Wally? I like that we will be employing millions of low-income citizens at better wages and improving their health. But I hate the stuff they want to build into their contracts. I wonder if they will ever figure out that you have access to all of it. If they don't want me to have access to their research, they should have their research department quit trying to hack my systems. I think it's perfectly fair. They hack me, I hack back. And I have plans for those contracts they want. On the surface, we'll give them what they want. But every person online in Genesis Engine is playing the game. I won't let the workers be cheated from that. Now let's see what Michael and Kit are up to. 2 months prior to Genesis Engine going live. From Game Tech Design Team. To Vernon Throckmorton. CC Billy. We think you'll like this design. It meets the requirements laid out by Wally, but gives us what we want in our workforce. Every worker will get the character class, Contract Worker. This blocks them from the usual combat and crafting classes. We have also compiled a list of all the usual weapons and skills used by the basic warrior, mage, rogue, priest, and crafter classes. Contract workers will be blocked from using any of these skills and weapons. Since they can't progress in the skills needed for standard classes, it should be incredibly difficult to ever gain the ability to kill monsters. There's a small chance that they might learn some skills from advanced classes. We can't skip them entirely, but Wally agrees that it will be very difficult to even learn of these skills and harder yet to qualify for them. This leaves our workers with just the skills we want them to have. Instead of a half-dozen useful skills in the 3 primary/secondary/tertiary slots, they have only the skills for their current job. And while there's a large pool of esoteric skills that each player can gain, the trick here is they won't know about them. And it's hard as hell to gain the skills considering how their characters are set up. A great example is cobra tossing, who is going to go around chucking telephone poles at opponents to try and gain the skill. Smiley face. Other skill examples are elephant taming, phrenology, astrogation, and gastromancy. The I will allow us to use the lack of normal skills to trade for an extensive set of perks. Haul 3 and Dig 2 are in this set. We also have a collection of mental buffs that will fall under the perk Endure. We've essentially taken the raid buffs that would normally let players overcome fear and morale checks during raids. Our workers will be happy, follow orders, heal faster, and not worry about their lives so much. As for their tertiary skills, we give them their needed skills, but in the slowest category for gaining experience. We have a lot of control over this, and can switch them from role to role as needed. We'll need lumberjacks and shepherds at the start, but can swap them to miners or salesmen as needed. Finally, their abilities are limited by the tier system. It's unlikely that any worker will be able to complete the requirements to advance to Tier 2. There are 5 levels of skill per tier. It'll be nearly impossible for them to get past rank 5 in any skill since they won't be advancing past Tier 1. Experience gain is too low for tertiary skill, with most tasks giving 1 EP for a skill. Can you imagine needing to cut down 1,000 trees? That's what it will take to gain rank 5 in just one skill. There are numerous reasons for wanting to control how high their abilities go, the main one being keeping them focused on their job and not out adventuring. Secondly, as a player progresses, even a contract worker, higher level skills, and random encounters with low-level bosses can result in a player gaining special perks, points used to buy core skills, or other unique advantages. This will be more common in Tier 2 or Tier 3 players, so it is imperative to keeping control of our workforce that we limit them to Tier 1 and low-level skills. The list of limits are: rank 5 in any their main class, contract worker. That hard cap is set in the game. Rank 5 in any stat. Since all of our contract workers will be human, they will start at 0 and max out at 5. They won't be able to raise the caps on stats like normal characters because they can't fight and can't earn the points needed to raise the soft cap of 5. No bonus skills for maxing out stats. Normally, when a player gains the ability to move to Tier 2, the game gives rewards for stats they have managed to raise to a value of 10. These rewards help them to qualify for better class upgrades. While we can't remove this benefit from contract workers, we've asked for the bonuses to only be given when they have left the first tier. It's unlikely to occur in any case. If getting a 5 in a stat is very difficult, 10 is impossible. We are in agreement with the other alpha sponsors on this setup and hope to finalize and get it approved soon. Once we have it finalized, we'll give it to Wally to implement.